And the choice of priorities, because there will be multiple priorities in the manifestos of the parties or the governing party or the governing parties in our instance, is guided by their alignment to the attainment of the goals of the National Development Plan of Vision 2030 as adopted by Parliament in 2012.
Moving to the Free State, Okudili Nwabo has been sentenced to 8 years imprisonment for dealing in drugs in the Bethlehem Magistrates Court. The Nigerian national, who goes by the alias CJ, was found guilty of dealing in drugs and corruption. Free State Hawk spokesperson Zweli Mhubiledi says in January 2019, a police member in Bethlehem reacted to information provided by a concerned resident and visited a house where he recovered sachets of cat and cash upon searching Nwabo. Mubeledi says police also received information about a vehicle transporting drugs.
On a charge of dealing in drugs, the court sentenced CJ to 7 years imprisonment, of which 2 years is suspended for 5 years. On the count of corruption, he was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. The two sentences will run separately, resulting in an effective 8 years imprisonment. In addition, the accused was declared unfit to possess a firearm.
Back in the Eastern Cape, the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality has urged residents to be vigilant amid the discovery of the short-hole borer beetle in the city, which destroys various types of trees. The outbreak of the beetle was first detected in South Africa in the KwaZulu-Natal Botanical Garden, Pietermaritzburg, in 2017 and has already killed trees in the area and in Cape Town. The short-hole borer beetle reproduces very rapidly inside a tree and then spreads to other trees. Health MMC for the Metro, Chonono Buyeye.
Short-hole beetle bores into trunks of favorable host trees and starts its life cycle in the tree and feeding on the tree, eventually killing the tree. The danger is that the trees die and are more vulnerable to strong winds as they are rotten. We want to warn our people to be on the lookout. We don't want rotten trees to fall on people, children or property.
Lastly, Haitian Prime Minister Gary Conille has told the UN Security Council in New York that the arrival of the first Kenyan police officers under a UN-backed mission marked a critical stage to restoring security in a country ravaged by gang violence. Around 200 Kenyan police arrived in Haiti last week as part of the long-delayed mission mandated to help national police fight armed gangs that have taken over most of the capital. Recapping the top story this hour, Eastern Cape Police have arrested 8 suspects in connection with a 2-day kidnapping ordeal at Lusikisiki in the Eastern Cape. Headlines at 3:30 for SAFM News. I'm Dino Mutaung.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Rulani Penn's emotional farewell letter to Sundowns fans and players, and USA confirm appointment of former Proteas woman coach Hilton Moring. More details at 3:30.
Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
It's Truck Month at Ford, and that means one thing. You save big when you upgrade to a 4x4. For a limited time only, get a Ford Ranger 4x4 from only $8,599 per month. Visit your nearest Ford dealer to get the best deal on a Ranger 4x4 from only $8,599 per month with free 4x4 driver training. TNCs apply.
In the heart of darkness, a beacon of light emerges. A brand new season is coming your way with your 2024 Miss South Africa Top 30. Hosted by our reigning queen, Miss South Africa, we embark on a transformative journey. Join us for the spectacular new season of Crown Chasers.
Crown Chasers is back.
Starts 29 June at 8:30 p.m. only on S3 Open Up.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
There's no question what is it that moves the national pulse today. We'll speak to three ministers, and all fascinating ones. One from the Minister of Land Reform, then we'll chat to the Minister of Public Works as well as the Minister of Basic Education. All reasons and more for you to stay connected to the national pulse. My name's Ashraf Garda. Welcome to the show. Welcome and thank you for being a part of it. Love it as always when you engage. So when we think about the issues that moves the national pulse and has the conversations that really drives what needs to be driven in the country, then I certainly welcome your input. And as always, those numbers to save and make a note of wherever you may be in the country, around the world, listening on radio, listening on live streaming, listening on the new SABC Plus app, wherever you are. I'd love to know where you are and what it is you're doing right now. 0614104107 is the voice notes number to text or to send a message, right? So WhatsApp, and then to call in 086 000 2032, and do connect on our X or Twitter platform, SAFM Radio and Facebook. You'll find SAFM there. You'll certainly find me there, and that all important hashtag, the National Pulse, right? Let me get cracking with the daily. That's my point, right? So yesterday or the day before was just fascinating around the whole issue around Gayton McKenzie. I mean, so to repeat the point, I mean, the Judge Zondo tells him to sit down, and Minister McKenzie says, the last time I sat was I sat for 10 years when a judge told me to sit the last time. But that is one thing. We also know that earlier on he responded when he was asked to swear that he will not divulge any secrets, and he said, well, I won't be like Gwede Mantashe, because earlier on Gwede Mantashe made a mess up when he said, I will divulge secrets, and it was big laughter sort of twice in short succession. And then I saw a video clip of the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Josiento Ramakgopa, together with the Freedom Front leader and the Minister of Correctional Services, right, Peter Groenewald, and the way there was banter with the two of them, and the way they were laughing. I mean, it was like uncontrollable laughter. I don't know if you saw that, right? And that got me also thinking about Hanif Hendricks, the leader of the Al Jamaa party, where, he's a deputy minister. And he's thrilled at his position. But he also made the point that he was hoping to get the deputy president position. And when asked about it, he said, well, you know what? You have to think high. You have to think positively. But it's interesting. And that got me thinking about, Nelson Mandela on that day when the Springboks won the Rugby World Cup in 1995. And not only did he just support the Springbok captain, Francois Pienaar, he had the audacity to wear the number 6 jersey of the captain, Francois Pienaar. And, all those things combined tells me that, South Africa, we can think of the problems we have every single day, but the truth is we don't have Trump and we don't have Biden. So let's just be aware of that. And in spite of those problems, we actually have an incredible sense of humor and a credible way of finding warmth even in the most difficult of circumstances. And I think we need to hold on to that. Because what I'm saying is this, right? If we can put that together and be aware of just how innovative we are, then maybe, just maybe, we can utilize what we've experienced in the last day or two, galvanize that and say, this is a truly innovative nation. I mean, bottom line for now, just for you to consider, is like, do you agree with me? South Africa is truly a nation alive with possibilities. I'm Ashraf Garda, and that's my point. Now, what's yours?
The National Pulse.
Do you see 9 days without water as a crisis, or is it just a nuisance?
It's definitely a crisis. I mean, you can't take a shower, personal hygiene is at risk, you've got elderly people. Thankfully, the residents have sort of clubbed together, and we had generous donations of some people sharing water trucks and boreholes. Otherwise, people just wouldn't survive. I mean, think about 9 days without a drop of water. It's absolutely catastrophic.
Now, I do understand it is widespread. Do you know how widespread it is?
Yes, so we've actually got letters of support for this protest from Craig Park area. We've got people from Melville. We've got people from certain area parts of Greenside. Some people have been intermittent, but there's a lot of people in these areas who also had no water for 9 days.
Doreen Tell, a resident of Amarensha in Johannesburg.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Well, indeed. Welcome to the Pulse. Welcome to the National Pulse. It's not so much a government of national unity. Let me just emphasize that. So we should be chatting to the Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development imminently. I'll say that. But would you like to add to what I just said earlier on, like examples of South Africa being truly alive with possibilities? I mean, I've given the examples of the Gayton McKenzie one. I've mentioned Hanif Hendricks, both ministers. In fact, Minister of Electricity, Minister of Correctional Services, and then Gwedi Mantashe, another minister. Just how unique they've been in the last few days, and whether we can galvanize that uniqueness in other aspects of South African life. I mean, things that truly, truly matter, meaning that we are innovative. So perhaps, A, do you agree with me that we are alive with possibilities, number one? But then B, do you have examples of that? I mean, can you share examples? And I don't mean just on the national scale. It could be, examples in your community, like maybe a school teacher, in your families. And they just do things that are just remarkable. And in doing so, they are able to connect with people. And I'd love to hear those stories. So if you have a thought on that, those personal lived experiences, then I want to know about it. 0614-104-107. Now, I did mention earlier on that the UK has an election. The USA has an election later on in the year. Let's get to the UK election for now. They're voting today. They're voting in this general election. And it seems very much like the Conservative Party, the Tory Party, will lose their hold on government. What are the big issues, right? There's issues around immigration, which is high, and that should be high on the next Prime Minister's list. Remember, think about Rwanda and the British connection there. And that certainly has an impact on people from Africa and African people in general. But why else should all of us on this continent keep an eye on what goes on in the UK election? Why does it matter to us? Why should it matter to us? Well, the BBC's Khadidiato Cisse explains.
On July 4th, the UK will hold its general election. British people will vote for what members of parliament they want to represent them. Many MPs, plenty of political parties, and a lot of policies. Policies that will have an impact on Africa and Africans. So, here are some issues we think matter to you. Rwanda flights.
This is an urgent national priority.
The current Conservative government want to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda. Currently, the deal with Rwanda involves sending 300 migrants that have illegally crossed the English Channel. In June alone, around 600 people have arrived on small boats. Opposition party Labour want to cancel the Rwanda scheme and hire new cross-border police officers, whereas the Liberal Democrats would like to provide safe and legal routes for refugees. Immigration. Both of the largest parties agree immigration numbers are too high. The Conservative Party want to fix an annual number for work and family visas, prioritizing high-skilled migrants. The Labour Party want to reform a points-based immigration system and end the long-term reliance on overseas workers. So, while Labour is criticized for avoiding to commit to specific targets, they have criticized the Conservatives for missing targets in the past. Of the 1.2 million people who came to the UK in 2023, 141,000 of them were Nigerian. More than any other African country and the second most non-EU country after India. The topic of immigration also ties into our next topic of education. Currently, if you're in the UK studying, a graduate visa gives you the permission to stay for at least 2 years after, and only those on postgraduate research programs can bring their family members. The two major parties haven't mentioned a change to that, but Nigel Farage's Reform UK wants to ban students from bringing their partners and children to the UK, whereas the Green Party would allow this and also give visa holders a right to vote.
After Brexit, there's one important element that the UK government can pay attention to. UK government is now aggressively trying to build bilateral relationships with African countries. Who are the best allies, who are the best ambassadors to actually deliver that message? I think these students, if leveraged, if used, they can serve multiple purposes. One, to serve African interests, at the same time to serve the UK government interests.
So, to end on, how will the winners of this election look to boost their partnership with the continent?
Both the main parties talk about the importance of working with the Commonwealth nations. So of course, that includes nations in Africa, and both the Labour and the Conservatives also talk about the importance of Britain's role in providing development, and the idea of course, seeing off competition in the continent. And I think what they see as competition is primarily a reference to China. So there we are. I don't think Africa is being particularly singled out for poor treatment in these manifestos. It's just that when it comes to general elections, it's remarkable how parochial they are.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, so that election is on the go right now, and hopefully that clip would help you understand just how it potentially should impact the African continent. I wonder if you have an opinion on that election between primarily, Labour Party, Social Democrats as well on the other hand, but Labour and Conservatives standing to lose power. It seems almost certain. So that's what the polls say. We shall see about that, right? But if you have thoughts on what's going on in Britain, how much do you care about that in terms of its impact? 0614 104 107, right? Okay, by the way, it's 100 days for Eskom. Tomorrow's Eskom's load shedding, no load shedding, 100 days tomorrow. But next up, we're going to talk about ANC policy, national policy in relation to the government of national unity, right after this.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, so let's understand this is a fascinating discussion around, where does, national policy now fit or change, considering we have a government of national unity still driven primarily by the ANC, and they've pronounced on policy direction around it, noting this is growing uncertainty amongst South Africans, but maybe even political parties about how policy at national level will be implemented, keeping in mind that many of the political parties clearly have their own agenda. Can I say that? Their own manifesto. Certainly they do that. So let's do this. First, we're going to chat to Professor Andre Duvenage, who is a political analyst at the Northwest University's Potch campus. Prof. Duvenage, good chatting to you once again. Hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Nice to
Good afternoon indeed. Right. Okay, let's do this. Let's first play this clip in terms of what the ANC has had to say about policy in relation to the government of national unity.
In light of numerous pronouncements by certain political parties inside and outside the government of national unity, including by some commentators in our public discourse, the ANC wants to categorically state that there is certainty about the policy platform of the ANC-led government of national unity. This was agreed to by all political parties who signed the government of national unity statement of intent. There was no agreement about sealed mandates, where each minister in the government of national unity would pursue their sectarian party policies in government. Such an agreement would have run counter to both the letter and spirit of the constitution, to which all the GNU party signatories have agreed to act on the basis of. Accordingly, the ANC implores all South Africans, and especially news commentators, to familiarize themselves with the substantive elements of the GNU Statement of Intent. Clause 8 of the GNU Statement of Intent outlines the foundational principles of the GNU policy program, anchoring it on transformative constitutionalism. Clause 11 of the same statement outlines the substantive policy program that constitutes the basic policy framework of the GNU. Clause 19 deals with instances where substantive disagreements over policy may arise. Subclause 19.3 explains the majority number of seats that must be canvassed by a party wishing to repeal, change, or introduce a new policy. Taken into proper context, therefore, especially clause 19.3, it must be understood that all existing government policy remains in effect without exception. Any other interpretation of this clause cannot be taken seriously at this point. As a matter of process, the National Executive of Government is going to convene a government lekgotla where they will discuss the broad framework of what will constitute the medium-term strategic framework of government, which is the policy program of government. And that will then be taken to Cabinet for adoption. Any policy must be introduced through that channel and be ratified by a decision of Cabinet.
Now, I wonder whether that helps clear things up for you, or you're even more confused with that. But let's get the answers now from Prof. Andre Dubenacher. So, I mean, you've heard that clip. You're probably more aware of the policy positions. Guide us through this. You know, there's national policy, as it always was, under the ANC. There's an ANC-led government. Now there's national policy under the GNU, or some may say the ANC-led GNU. And then there are different political parties. What's your understanding of how this is going to play out?
Well, Ashraf, you use the word uncertainty, and you can probably add with uncertainty limited ability to predict. The fact of the matter is we had an election, different parties received mandates from their supporters. Now they are in a government of national unity, and I know there are a statement of intent, but already there are different interpretations, like with the Constitution, about who should approach what, when, and how. And the fact of the matter is that the parties now must come to a new agreement. And that is what they are busy doing at the moment. But already we are getting conflicting tendencies. On one line, you have Helen Zille claiming that the DA must make their mark, and I can understand why she's saying that. On the other level, you are getting Anyasa Lesufi appointing his own cabinet against the principles of the statement of intent of the government of national unity. The fact of the matter is we have different parties with different ideological perspectives, bringing them together and acting accordingly is going to be difficult. They will first need to find a consensus amongst each other. And that is not going to be easy. It's all about values. It's about trust. It is basically about creating new institutions, processes, protocols, and ways to deal with what is ahead of us. That amid probably the biggest political, economic, and social set of challenges we had to face in the past 30 years. So indeed, a challenging situation where we require leadership, but also the ability to seek middle ground, to know that you cannot attain everything you want, and to act in the best interest of all citizens.
Okay, now you've just provided a fabulous wish list, and I'm going to suggest that the parties are not going to listen to you, but somehow they're going to have to find a way to listen to each other, right? So what then are the mechanisms, to put this together? Because, there's been the GNU statement of intent. I understand that part, right? But how does that then translate into now an effective government? Because up to now it's been parties coming together effectively outside of Parliament, but now they within the confines of Parliament.
Let's argue from a conflict theory perspective. What we have at the moment is an accommodation of conflict. We're saying there are different parties and we are accommodating all of them. But that is not to resolve the conflict. And now we need to look at ways and mechanisms to resolve the conflict. And one way is to create documentation like the statement of intent of the government of national unity. I honestly believe that we need a document that can structure coalition politics in some way or another. Because you're quite right, the politicians aren't going to listen to me. They are acting in terms of their own interest. But currently, we have a situation where you cannot act alone. And I think that is the reality that a person like Panyasa Lesufi do not understand or do not want to understand. And that is that it's a time to build bridges. It is a time to be pragmatic in terms of your own ideology, to meet each other on another level in order to resolve the conflict, to quote Albert Einstein.
Okay, so therefore, this new agreement that has to come into play, when would that kick in? And I take it that parties would have to agree to that, right? Because there's been the initial statement of intent, but this new agreement that you talk about effectively would kick out or replace the statement of intent, right?
Well, you're absolutely right. I think it is already started with a statement of intent. And on another level, it is initiated in terms of the president and other groupings' perspective about the necessity of a national dialogue, which will be more inclusive than the role of part in the coalition. This may include, for example, labor, the corporate sector, civil society, business, etc. But the fact of the matter is we need to create and grow on what we created in 1994, and that constitution is the basis, is the foundation. But I am afraid it is not enough to deal with the current situation, and we need to build on that principles, on that ethics, and take that to the realities of South Africa. So, and the reality is a difficult environment at the moment.
So at the moment, a lot of our conversations have been focused on, who gets into parliament or into the provincial executives, as we've just seen with Gauteng. But very soon now, it has to move from actual policy of the various ministers and their ministries. Even at this early stage, are you seeing certain ministers jumping the gun and effectively dancing to their own tune, out of kilter with what we may think would be the national policy?
Well, I think what is important for ministers in a government of national unity is to make themselves visible in terms of strong statements in order to send a message to their support base that they are in position and they are prepared to act accordingly. But on the external level, this is creating a lot of internal stress and conflict among the parties and the perceptions. And that is the difficulty. I think what we need, and I think that is what the spokesperson also said earlier, that they need to get a Lehotla or something going where they can align and talk with each other like we are doing with the rugby teams before a big test. Bring people together, align them on certain principles. And what I have seen in the statement of intent is indeed sound principles. For example, we must support the General Constitution, the 1996 Constitution, the principle of social justice, integrated economic development and job creation, and principles related to good governance. I don't think anyone in politics within the system, and there are currently anti-system processes. I'm reading the MK party increasingly as an anti-system party, but if you're working within the system, then these principles should be acceptable. Okay. Now the question is, how do we take this out and implement it in the different departments?
And when you have the answers, we want to know all about it. Prof. Andre Duvenage, appreciate your time. There you are. Fascinating insights, certainly lots of answers, but lots of questions based upon those answers. And I'll leave it to you as an audience that effectively moves the national pulse to contribute via your own sort of dialogue by just calling in or WhatsApping. You can do that right away. Let's get the news headlines now. Just go on 3:30 with Daneo.
Thank you, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 3:30. A large clinical trial in South Africa and Uganda has shown that a twice yearly injection of a new drug provides young women with total protection against HIV infection. In other news, disaster risk management authorities in Cape Town say engineering teams are assessing rain damage and mudslides in areas affected by the recent heavy rainfall. And Eastern Cape Police have arrested 8 suspects in connection with a 2-day kidnapping ordeal at Lusikisiki. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The Mike 1 going down through Joburg's very heavy today. Queues from sort of Houghton Drive in the Parktown area, right through Crown and right down towards Xavier Street in Ormonde. If you're on your way down to Uncle Charlie's, you might want to just select an alternative route and avoid that. It's heavily backed up. Breakdown on the M1 South at Ravonia, so delays coming through from the Peclu interchange. That is slow on your way through to Four Ways area today. A lot of traffic piling up around the Cliffdale area of KZN. There was an earlier blast that happened. It blocked the road. They conducted the blast, cleaned up, and then have reopened it. But there are some roadworks in the area as well. So it is slow, but it's particularly heavy on the Pietermaritzburg side, Pietermaritzburg bound side, if you like. So just after Marion Hill Toll Plaza, you get to sort of Shongweni, and then you sit in some very heavy traffic all the way through to the Cliffdale area. There may well be something that's broken down on top of that, but it is largely all caused by the earlier blasting, which has been completed. Quite so on the Durban-bound track as well. Cape Town today, N7, Jakes Covell Drive, running south is slow through Goodwin, and there's an unusual backlog on Marine Drive at Milnerton. Traffic queuing out towards the Loxton Road, Woodbridge Island side. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkhabele.
Right, our own Minister of Sport, Tumi, good chatting to you. You're going to start with the Sundowns factor, right?
Yes, on the Rulani Mokoena tip, the former Mamelodi Sundowns coach has written an emotional farewell letter after spending 12 years at the club, saying goodbye to the fans of the club and also players. Mokoena has fallen victim of another shake-up at the club as Sundowns parted ways with him despite a new 4-year deal last season. Mokoena won 4 league titles in a row as co-coach and later sole head coach of Sundowns, a feat no other tactician in the domestic game has managed. Meanwhile, former Bafana assistant coach Thabo Senong says that Mokwena's Sundowns departure is a massive blow for young up-and-coming coaches in the country and that he had a positive impact on South African football.
We all know that Coach Rulani, he's an asset to South African football. He represents excellence in many ways. He represents the fact that a coach who has never played professional can actually be excellent, like the likes of Jose Mourinho. But also young coaches, if given a chance, can excel in the global space. And he has shown that, on how he has transformed Mamelodi Sundowns as a team. If you look at the style of play, if you look at the points acquired, we've never had a situation where you see league champions leading the league with plus minus 23 points, so it was purely total dominance, and it's a huge loss to Mamelodi Sundowns, I'm sure.
Elsewhere, Lionel Messi's fitness remains in doubt ahead of today's Copa America quarterfinals with Ecuador, with coach Lionel Scaloni saying that he will wait before deciding on his team. Messi missed Argentina's final group stage match on Saturday after complaining of a sore right hamstring. In cricket, former long-serving Proteas woman coach Hilton Marine has been appointed as the head coach of the USA Women's Senior and Under-19 cricket teams. Marine ended an 11-year spell with Cricket South Africa as the head coach of the Proteas women in May and has now secured his next job in the United States. The 46-year-old led South Africa through a groundbreaking decade as he oversaw the professionalization of women's cricket in the country in 2014. Before leading them through a series of major successes, including a maiden World Cup final in the 2023 ICC Women's T20 World Cup on home soil. Meanwhile, Proteas coach Rob Walter says that the rapid progress by the national team in the past 18 months is a reason for optimism. The Proteas won 8 of their 9 matches at the T20 World Cup, coupled with winning 8 of their 10 at the ODI event last year, showing significant improvement, particularly in how how they approach tournament play under Walter, who only took the job last February. In the meantime, new All Blacks coach Scott Robinson has left star playmaker Bowden Barrett on the bench for the first test against England, and having spent most of the 2024 playing in Japan, Barrett has was named among the replacements, with Damian McKenzie preferred at fly half for Saturday's series opener. Then McKenzie will partner scrum half TJ Perenara, who returns to the All Blacks for the first time since rupturing his Achilles tendon in late 2022. Then in a woman in sports, Proteas all-rounder Chloe Tarrant says that they need to be more consistent in all aspects of the game when they face India in their final T20 series on Friday afternoon. Tarrant makes her significant return to the Proteas, having missed the 3 one-day internationals and the one-off test due to a back injury. She says that winning the series will boost the team's confidence ahead of the World Cup, which takes place in Bangladesh from the 3rd to the 20th of October this year. With that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour, including that draw from the AFCON, and you will find out which group Bafana is in. Other than that, I am Dumin Kapele.
Just a quick one. We spoke about the Sundowns coach exit and where is he? I mean, did he say anything in terms of where is he going to go?
No, nothing as yet. From the interview that I heard him speaking, he's not allowed to speak about why he left Mamelodi Sundowns. However, what we know is that he says that his hand was forced.
So he was forced.
He didn't want to leave.
There's never a one performance, as I told you. You can't lose a coach that's won you 2 league titles in a row and think that the next coach will automatically win it. But we'll see what happens. You have your own personal choices. I know that. We'll see what happens with a smile. Right? More sport in an hour.
The National Pulse.
There's been widespread confirmations from other places, not from the DA officially, that in fact the DA accept the fact that now that they will not be part of the province of Gauteng's executive.
The ANC basically said to the DA, well, we're going to allocate you 3 portfolios out of 10, even though the difference of seats between the ANC and the DA is 6, or percentage is about 7% only. And the ANC would take 7 seats, either for itself or for other unnamed parties. So the DA, it's a bit like Ashraf selling your house without agreeing on the purchase price. This would be the equivalent, in the sense that the DA had no idea who it would be going to business with in this government.
Not only on a former party leader, I could say a former ambassador as well.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, let's get to your calls. By the way, we're going to chat to the Eskom spokesperson in a few minutes' time. Eskom load shedding reaching the 100-day mark tomorrow. Will we get there and beyond? What do you think about that? In fact, I'm going to put a vote line on my Twitter or X account, and we'll share that through SFM Radio as well. I want you to vote on it, and you tell me what you think about the fact that can you believe it, actually? All right, let's get some calls. Let's get to Commander Force. Is that the name? Yeah. Commander Force, the Minister of Defence, I gather, right? In the Northwest. Well, you have to be the Minister of Defence. Good chatting to you. Hello.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How do you do?
Okay, I don't know whether Bantu or Lamisa will agree with you, but anyway, let's. Yeah.
No. No, we gave ourselves these ranks on top of comrades in controversies.
Okay, got that. Right, got it. Go ahead. Yeah.
First mental, yes. Nice time. First time in your show, Ashraf.
Thanks for joining in. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right. What do you want to say?
Just 2 quick things. Number one, I'd like to pay honor to Comrade President Jacob Zuma. Secondly, and just comment on the government of national unity. I would just like to say that Ngamalala, we salute you, soldier among soldiers. Soldier lama soldier, guerrilla lama guerrilla. We will always love you, Comrade Zuma. Continue to stand for a united, better South Africa than the selling out that we are seeing.
Okay. Yeah, I got that. Okay, that's got that. Let's see. Well, there you are. Plays for Jacob Zuma. Let's see how his party, in fact, plays out in Parliament now that they've also dropped their case against, in terms of having that election effectively set aside, that election result. Right. There's more thoughts. Here's another one. I wonder what the Premier of Gauteng means when he says the trains will be coming to Gauteng, mostly Johannesburg from Harry Smith, Rustenburg and other places. Will he be turning Joburg into this first world African city and not a cell phone repair city. We will see party game changer Madoda saying that. Well, let's see. I mean, certainly that's amongst the pronouncements that the Minister, Panyaza Lesufi, said yesterday. The reality is I think I heard this yesterday. So like amongst all the countries of the African continent, if you can call Gauteng a country in terms of economic size, it's number 5 on the list. So it's that important that it succeeds for South Africa, right? And right now at the moment, there's so many things that are just wrong with what's going on in the Gauteng province. So whoever the Premier is, and we know who the Premier is, they have to get things together and big time indeed. I had that question about South Africa, live with possibilities. Here's one.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf. It's Pedro Tracker here in Free State, coming from Western Cape, heading to Gauteng. Mr. Ashraf, of course, South Africa is full of possibilities. If you have just signed the dotted line that you'll be getting 100,000 smakaroos every month, 100,000 rand per month, Mr. Ashraf, of course you'll be smiling all the way to the bank. South Africa is full of possibilities. I can't wait to see what Mr. Mackenzie can offer us. Danko!
Okay, you were talking about the 100,000 smackaroos, and then you can't see, well, you're waiting for Mr. Mackenzie to offer you. Well, you should be the Minister of Transport. I told you that before. Why you're not there, I don't really know, right? But thanks for that. We do have, let's talk about Eskom now. So here's the question. Tomorrow is the 100-day mark of no load shedding. I mean, first of all, you can own up. I mean, who believed we're going to get to that? Effectively, the majority of people I spoke to at home, families, friends, on air, when it was 5 and 10 days, like, this is just a puzzle story, man. You watch what's going to happen on the 30th of May, and you know that? May came and went, and nothing changed in terms of the status quo, meaning we had no load shedding. Well, we still have no load shedding. So let's talk about understanding what this is all about with Daphne Mokoena, the spokesperson for Eskom. Daphne, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to your listeners. And thank you for having me.
All right, so we're on day 99 now. I take it we're going to get to a century. The big question is, how much longer beyond that? Can we get to a double century, 200?
Look, maybe let me start by saying that, yes, and confirm that we are on the 99th day without load shedding. And this is as a result of our executives and employees supported by our board, having to work tirelessly to improve or reduce and ultimately end load shedding. That's the goal. And tomorrow, yes, we are going to celebrate that milestone of achieving 100 days or 100 consecutive days without load shedding. And this milestone, Ashraf, is a reflection of our enhanced reliability and performance of our generation fleet. As a result, I think we've been talking a lot on media to say we are busy with the generation recovery plan that was initiated in March 2023, and we've been implementing aggressively planned maintenance. And yes, we're now seeing the benefits or the gains of this, both these implementation of these plans.
So let's take a step back to where I started. Yes. Because it's obviously just said on many public pronouncements, the public didn't believe you as Eskom when it went like a week with no load shedding. It's like, no, this is just a big election ploy from the ruling party to show us how good they are so that we can all vote for them. At that stage, when that sort of conversations were happening, what were you as Eskom thinking?
Look, we knew, remember, we were still advocating that, we've got a plan. Obviously, we were not going to achieve any benefits overnight with the plan that we were implementing. But we knew that our teams are committed and dedicated and to basically ensure that, we reduce the stages of load shedding. And at the time, I think it was already observed, within the country that our stage of load shedding were reducing to a comfortable level where we were actually comfortable with that reduction to say we are going to, at some point, reach the level where we could suspend. Remember, the suspension of this load shedding comes with our unplanned outages having to reduce. And we said on the 26th of March, 2024, this year, that when we announced our winter outlook, we were confident that we may reach a position where we are not load shedding, or at least load shedding at stage 1. However, we then said that the likely scenario that we will implement load shed if we reach 15,500, then the likely scenario is that we will implement load shedding at stage 1 or 2 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
But however, with the generation improvement plan that was in place, that we had always been advocating for, we have seen now the unplanned outages having reduced to 12, or averaging at about 12,000 megawatts compared to that 15,500, about 3.5 stages, improvement. So all those, were deliberate, and yes, there was, that discomfort from the public to say we are not going to, our winter was going to be the worst. And in actual fact, since this winter started, we haven't seen a day of load shedding. But we knew that, with the dedication, as I said, of our team and the plans that we're making, that we may come to this or be in this position where, we could see days of no load shedding.
So give us a snapshot then of what has changed compared to before, that we've seen this honeymoon, and I really call it a honeymoon, right? Because we're just so surprised by it. So what has actually changed?
Yeah, as I said, that we started implementing what we call the Generation Operational Recovery Plan, which we commenced with that plan in March 2023. So, as I said, that you cannot, obviously, when you start with that plan, and we also, through the debt relief scheme that we received from National Treasury, we're able also to, aggressively implement a planned maintenance. So what we are seeing now is a result of all those plans now benefiting or actually the gains that we are seeing now is as a result of these two activities that we have done or implemented to ensure that our generation fleet is more reliable, and we have a more available energy, and what we call now the energy availability factor, which has improved from about 54.56, I think, when we closed the year in March, and we are sitting at about above 61% as we speak.
Okay, so going forward then, right, I mean, how confident are you? And if you are confident, then why would you be confident? I know what you've just said earlier on, that this position can be sustained, because what you want to have is a sense of normality, and you don't want to have speed bumps, right?
Yeah. So currently, I think we're still not out of the woods as yet. And that is why we're still saying that our winter outlook, is still in force, where we're saying that if load shedding will happen or could happen, it will be at stage 1 and 2, but that will be if our unplanned outages reaches 15,500 megawatts. Currently, they are averaging at 12,000 megawatts, though that's 3,500 megawatts difference. So currently, as we move, towards the end of winter, obviously the demand, remember, as well, would increase, because as you move, especially in July, I think around 21st of July, they say that it's the coldest day of winter. Depending on demand, we may get into, or we may implement load shedding. But currently, with our plans and our forecast, we are still comfortable to say that we will continue with the suspension.
Absolutely.
Of
Well, I'll tell you what,
load
for now, it's good to celebrate with you. I mean, we've been critical. We all are critical, and maybe understandably so. But it's good to celebrate with you, with Eskom, about getting to that 100-day milestone.
it.
And maybe just maybe have your celebration should be a candle-lit dinner. And I will say this, a candle-lit dinner. Much appreciate your time. There we are. Daphne Mokoena, candle-lit dinner, Eskom spokesperson. There we are. That's your thoughts. 100 days of no load shedding. It's there. It's imminent. What do you make of it? Give me your thoughts. I'd love you to communicate on air and on social media. Let's chat next up to the Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, certainly as part of the plans now as we move on from beyond the election to the naming of the cabinet, is to speak to as many ministers as we can get in the various departments and get their take on where they are and what their policies may be, right? Now, interesting in terms of land reform and rural development in particular, it's widely known that land ownership in South Africa is a particularly, on the one hand, it's a diverse issue, it's divisive, but it's also united because many people are on side regarding that. So here's a question. We have the PAC-led Ministry of Land Reform and Rural Development. The question really is, what comes first, the policy of the party or the policy of national government? It's a complex issue, maybe not, I don't know. Let's find out more about it with the Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development, Mzwanele Nyonso. Minister, appreciate your time and thanks for joining us first time round as the Minister here on the National Pulse.
Thank you. Greetings to you, Ashraf, and greetings to your viewers, and thanks for having us.
Thank you. So perhaps you can answer this as that first question. Clearly there's a competing interest between PAC policy and what is perceived as existing national policy. How are you going to navigate that?
We'll see, Ashraf. Let us meet with the department, meet with the deputy minister, meet with everyone concerned. Look at the policies of the state, look at the program of the government, look at what the previous minister was doing, and then chart the way forward. That will happen on Tuesday, and after Tuesday, I can respond better to you.
Okay, well, I understand that, but, in meeting, would I take it that, how much of it would be existing policy? I mean, the ANC has already issued a statement, quoting clause 19.3, saying all existing government policies will remain in place, right, without exception, which then suggests there's no room for negotiation.
Now, remember, Ashraf, I'm not going to behave as if PAC has won elections, and therefore it's going to come and implement its policies. It's not about that. We are going to look at what is there at in the government, and we are going to look at the program of the ministry, and then we are going to find better ways to quickly address, low-hanging fruits, prioritize your land claims. The backlog that I'm told is thousands of people not being paid their land claims. Look at how we quickly come up with the program to develop the rural areas and make sure that rural people from Eastern Cape, Western Cape, all the rural areas in South Africa are developed so that we cap urbanization of African people from these rural areas to the township in search of greener pastures, when in fact they've got land that can be utilized, that they can use if they are given resources and they are guided correctly to eat fresh produce from their own land and also sell it, and then start to help them so that they don't go to Cape Town or Gauteng to look for jobs. So we just look at those low-hanging fruits, and then we'll take one thing at a time, and we will get there. Land restitution, land redistribution must happen in our lifetime.
So how, So land restitution is the one you've just touched on now. I mean, that's something that your party, the PAC, feels strongly about. And therefore, it is no coincidence. I think it needs to be punctuated, with a capital P, that your party's minister is now the minister of a ministry that has to deal with that issue. You spoke then earlier about low-hanging fruits. Would you say that the issue of land restitution is more the high-hanging fruits or not? I mean, I'm trying to understand that here.
No, it's not a high-hanging fruit, but we'll also look at it. We must address it as well. It's not a high-hanging fruit. All I'm saying is that for now, now that we have not yet met with everybody concerned, and also with the whole department, that we have a clear program of action. I'm just highlighting what is going to be the priority as of now. I can't sit down and not do anything and say, no, I'll wait for people to give me direction. Remember, as the minister, I must have a vision. And this is the vision that I'm telling you for now that we're going to do. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, your role will be to give direction. You also similarly want to stamp your mark on a ministry, like any other appointment in any other organization in the world, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. And that mark will be felt. That mark will be felt. Come on Tuesday, we'll sit down and we'll have 100 days, and we'll say after these 100 days, we are going to report back to you and to the nation to say this is what we have done so far. So we will definitely make a mark, and that mark will be felt by everyone. African people will feel that at least their land is slowly but surely going to be returned to them, and reforms are going to happen.
What for you, and this is more like a personal question, what for you is your biggest concern? And I think about it when all of us get into new positions, right? You're confident, you want to achieve, but there's also this concern in the back of your mind. What for you is your biggest concern?
The biggest concern is the landlessness of the African people. All problems of African people in this country emanate from the fact that they are landless, emanate from the fact that they can't access their own land, emanate from the fact that they can't work. In fact, joblessness is also caused by landlessness. So my concern is that if we can address the elephant in the room, which is the land problem, many problems of African people would have been resolved. So my concern is that, and I'm hopeful and I'm very confident that we will address that. Of course, we'll be working through the cabinet and through what is existing in the department.
Well, I'm going to put this to you, and I'm going to put it to others as well, right? That in the nature of this government of national unity, there's an opportunity for you to be part of government and do what's right for the people of the country. But there's also a shop window for your party to show others how you can govern, right? And I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yes, that is definitely so. We must show. In fact, we've been asked questions, pertinent questions by our people during campaigns. That how do we put you in government? How do we trust you? You've never been in government. Where did you govern before? And I'm sure that question is not going to be there. People will know that this is what PAC can do if it's given a chance to govern. That is what we're going to do, and we will prove that in this department, and it's going to happen, Ashraf.
Okay, let's leave it at that for now. We'll keep an eye on the low-lying fruits or the low-hanging fruits and the high-hanging fruits as well, and see how you navigate all of that. Appreciate your time, Minister of Land Reform, Mzwanele Nyotso. Looking forward to the big challenges and how you tackle them in the future. Thanks for your time. Much appreciated. Well, there you are. You can comment about that in terms of where the Minister of, we need to now refer to him less in the party sense, but certainly more as the minister, where the minister fits in terms of land reform policies and some of the biggest issues they need to tackle. I think it makes the point when he said, what are your biggest concerns? And he said landlessness. And I think that is absolutely spot on. You cannot run a country successfully when so many people are landless, without land, without homes. And the numbers are just frightening. Something has to give. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock with Daneo.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories: breakthrough HIV prevention trial raises hope, and Eastern Cape Police nab family kidnapping suspects. A very good afternoon to you. A large clinical trial in South Africa and Uganda has shown that a twice-yearly injection of a new drug provides young women with total protection against HIV infection. The trial tested whether the 6-month injection of lenacapavir would provide better protection against HIV infection than 2 other pills which need to be taken daily. UCT Professor of Medicine Linda Gail Becker was the principal investigator for the South African part of the study. She says the breakthrough gives great hope that a proven, highly effective prevention tool to protect people from HIV has now been developed. Disaster management authorities in Cape Town say engineering teams are assessing rain damage and mudslides in areas affected by the recent heavy rainfall. Strong winds with more rain are on the cards for Cape Town over the next few days. Disaster risk management head John Mini says about 170 residents in Vegiskraal informal settlement in Belgravia have been affected by the disruptive rains.
Well, we've been operating under level 2 warnings for wind and weather from the South African Weather Service for this week. And there has been impacts, but there's been no life-threatening emergencies reported, but disruptive flooding has been reported in areas like Kailicha, Overcome Heights, Kalk Bay, Sea Point even, and Belgravia.
The story may offend sensitive listeners, including children. Police in Mpumalanga are exhuming a body believed to be that of a 3-year-old girl, Peaceful Khoza, who went missing yesterday in Pinar, east of Mbombela. The child went missing from her home, and later the community apprehended a man who was allegedly burning human body parts yesterday in the same area. The angry residents accosted the man, who later showed them where he also buried another child, 6-year-old Junior Mabandla, who went missing last month. Mabandla was exhumed yesterday. A family member of the 3-year-old Aubrey Khoza.
We are disappointed about this matter, how it happened. A 3-year-old gone missing, and we found her in these conditions. It looks like it's a body band. It is hurting, done by a young man who was a friend to the father of the child, who were spending time together, staying and eating together. Today he is the one who has done this child. Yesterday we tried to calm the community not to kill him, because the moment he is dead, we won't know the people he works with.
Moving to the Eastern Cape, police have arrested 8 suspects in connection with a 2-day kidnapping ordeal at Lusikisiki. Police spokesperson Majola Nkotli says a group of 10 suspects stormed into a house at France locality and held 6 people at gunpoint, and their cell phones were stolen. Majola says a family vehicle was stolen and the family members were kidnapped and taken to a different destination in Libode. One of the victims was forced to travel with the suspects to Mthatha to withdraw cash. Nkotli says the 8 suspects briefly appeared in the Lusikisiki Magistrates Court on charges of kidnapping, with the possibility of additional charges.
On Monday morning, 1st July, police received a complaint of a disappearance of 6 family members. Immediately, a tracing and tracking team was activated, and with assistance from a private vehicle tracking company, police were led to a homestead in Libode. From the homestead, police rescued 5 victims and arrested 4 suspects. 1 unlicensed firearm was found from one of the suspects. Further police investigation led to the additional arrest of 4 suspects and the recovery of a stolen Toyota buggy and a Renault Clio.
Lastly, a military tribunal in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo has handed down death sentences to 25 soldiers who were accused of fleeing the enemy while deployed to fight M23 rebels. The M23 group, which is widely reported to be backed by Rwanda, has over the last few days captured several towns. A total of 31 defendants, including 27 soldiers and 4 of their civilian wives, appeared before the Butembo Garrison Military Court in North Kivu Province near the front line. The BBC's Will Ross has the details.
This week, the Congolese army detained 27 soldiers who were all accused of abandoning their positions. This had apparently helped the M23 rebels advance and seize new areas of North Kivu province. An army spokesman said the soldiers were also found looting goods from shops. A defence lawyer said they all pleaded not guilty and would appeal the death sentences that were handed down by the military tribunal. In March, the government lifted a moratorium on the death penalty, a controversial move which followed allegations that members of the army had been helping rather than fighting the rebels.
Recapping the top story this hour, a large clinical trial in South Africa and Uganda has shown that a twice-yearly injection of a new drug provides young women with total protection against HIV infection. Headlines at 4:30 for SAFM News. I'm Dinamo Taung.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Bafana drawn in Group K for AFCON qualifiers, and England captain confident of snapping New Zealand rugby drought. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It stays unusually heavily backed up on the Mike 1 today, moving south through Joburg from around about Houghton Drive in Parkdale all the way through to Ormonde down to Xavier Street before you're out of that. Blasting earlier today at Cliffdale between Durban and Pietermaritzburg. That certainly spiked the course to our traffic line with people wondering what's going on. It has all been cleared in terms of the blasting has been completed, but it's left a backlog of traffic if you're on your way to Pietermaritzburg from Shongweni going on to Cliffdale. Now, there are some roadworks there, of course, and it's released a whole pile-up of traffic to arrive at Marion Hill Plaza on your way to Durban at exactly the same time. So some queues to work through there. The M7 and South Coast Road junction, that's very busy. Looks like an issue that may be traffic related. The M7 both ways, and South Coast Road northbound coming into that from Clarewood's quite slow as well. Cape Town Marine Drive is pretty solid out through Milnerton towards the Sunset Beach area, and a breakdown on Plattekloof Hill causing a delay on the N1 outbound as you line up towards the Belleville area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Could you be paying less for your car insurance? Outsurance has comprehensive cover with all the bells and whistles. An essential cover for cars older than 5 years under 125,000 Rand that aren't financed.
I am Flip. I'm from Vredendal. I'm 54 years old. I'm only paid 267 Rand for my 2005 Ford Ranger from Outsurance Essential.
Whether you choose comprehensive or essential cover, Outsurance will make sure you don't pay more than you have to for car insurance. SMS out to 30754 now. Even if you just save a few hundred rands a month, it could add up to thousands a year.
Hi, I'm Lorraine. I'm 31 from Durbanville. I pay 770 Rand a month for my 2023 Toyota Corolla Cross from Outsurance Comprehensive.
Do it now. Go to outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Lights. Camera. Scalpel. Every second counts, and every cut, every thought, every action is critical. Critical. Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 11 June. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
Here he comes. Hello, guys. You're so dramatic. Hey, Bo, it's not me. It's the extra styling kit. The leather seats with the red finish. It's the tow bar, all coming standard with my red Isuzu badge. Wow, now that is extra.
Why be standard when you can get the all-new Isuzu D-Max X-Rider from just 8,742 Rand. Prime less 3.5%, 0% deposit, 40% balloon, and 72 months to pay. Get yours today. Finance is subject to approval. Isuzu Finance, a product of Westbank, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
And what for you moves the National Pulse today? We all have our own opinions. I want to know yours. WhatsApp, text or voice note 0614 104 107 or to call in 086 000 2032. Someone message you. Never give your name. You must always give your names in your message, right? With the WhatsApp. Hi, we talk about water. There is a water meter that is leaking water, is flowing onto the main road. Nothing is done. It's gone 3 weeks now. Thank you. Well, I don't know where you are from, so I can't tell you. But yeah, I hear your point, and that's really not good. Then in terms of the question about load shedding. So tomorrow's 100 days. That mark. And here's a question I put through on our Twitter line, and we've shared that through SFM radio as well. But I'll put it to you now. You can just WhatsApp us your thoughts. I said, So 100 days, no load shedding. What do you think? You think what? You think A, I can't believe it. Well, that's number one. I can't believe it. Number two, I'm so impressed. And number three, it won't last long. Can't believe it. So impressed. Won't last long. What do you think about all of those things? Right. Let's get on to one of the big issues that we need to cover. And we're certainly doing this all week as much as we can, which is reflecting on as many of the newly appointed ministers in office and what their plans are for the future. My guest now is the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Dean McPherson. I would say Minister McPherson. That's a first, isn't it?
yeah, Ashraf, you can just call me Dean. That is, it's still very strange to hear that, so please just call me Dean.
Well, then you speak my language. Clearly agree with you on that one. Anyway, right. Having said that, I mean, you're in office now. It's interesting. I mean, it's a couple of days, and many others are still having meetings. But I see you've effectively pronounced already on certain issues around public works of what you will do and what you won't do. Tell me what you've done.
Well, Ashraf, I've tried to get to grips with what is a monumental beast in government of a department, and I think very few people understand, how big this department does and what it's responsible for. It's the single biggest landlord in the country. It's estimated to own 88,000 buildings, nearly 5 million hectares of land, and also now responsible for the infrastructure drive in the country. And so I've just tried to just get to the bottom of what it is that is within my purview and try and set a tempo for the department to turn South Africa into a construction site around the concept of let's build South Africa. Because without an effective infrastructure program, we can't grow the economy and we can't create jobs. Of course, in order to do that, we need to get to the bottom of some very serious concerns that exist around the credibility of the asset register, which allows us to know what we do and don't own, understanding the kind of leases that government is involved in and whether government is in fact getting value for money, and start to look at some infrastructure programs like eradicating pit toilets from public schools once and for all. So those are sort of some of the pronouncements that I've looked at. I've also issued a memo to my colleagues in cabinet after consulting the Director General that indeed we have enough accommodation to accommodate everyone. And due to the fiscal constraints, there'll be no further procurement of houses, offices, furniture, fittings, or fixtures for the executive. And we're all just going to have to make do with what we have so that we can structure and focus every cent into the infrastructure drive that I really want to see this department take forward.
So let's stay with that, in terms of no procurement of new housing stock, no new furniture, much to the disappointment of maybe new MPs, I don't know. How much of that is a new policy or something that was existing that's simply being carried over?
In the sixth administration, there was a policy considered by Cabinet that, in fact, the matter of housing for the executive would start to be consolidated and rationalized. And we, again, will be taking that policy to the seventh administration to reaffirm, because I think it's important that we live within our means. Of course, the Cabinet has expanded slightly, and, there are a splitting of certain ministries, which ordinarily maybe would require more offices, more houses to be procured. But we're confident that we will be able to meet the needs of the executive as it is, and we'll be able to use the offices that we have. So, I think it's an important signal to the public that we also understand where the country is at the moment, and that we want to make this work, but we also need to make it work within the fiscal constraints that are around the country, because at the end of the day, it is a choice that we have to make, and the choice that the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure is making is to make sure that every single rand that we can put into infrastructure development is the right one to make.
Now, earlier on, I had a chat with the Minister of Land Reform, the PAC Minister of Land Reform, and now you are the DA Minister of Public Works. And I'm just saying that because it's a unique differentiation we haven't had to use for a long time, if ever, right? How much of, therefore, DA policy comes into what you're trying to implement? And is there a conundrum in terms of what you perceive to be DA policy and what and your thoughts versus what's finally agreed upon at national level?
Well, I mean, of course, Ashraf, the DA has certain policies, proposals and ideas that we want to take to the cabinet table. Our leader, John Steenhuisen, and the Minister of Agriculture has been upfront with the president that that's exactly what we want to do, and because we want to also introduce some new thoughts and ideas into government. And I mean, that's the purpose of the government of national unity, is to inject new thoughts, new ideas, and then to collectively come up with an agreed policy proposal for the government going forward. So, I think that there aren't any contradictions that have come up. I mean, obviously, where there are disagreements, we'll have to, make sure that those are handled correctly. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, actually, the PAC, they want more people to have land. As the minister, that is the single largest landowner in the country, I want more people to own land, and we're going to be looking at, how do we dispose of assets that the government owns that aren't being used, that we can put towards the public good for the public good. And that includes, the 5 million hectares that government currently owns. So I actually think that at the end of the day, Ashraf, we're going to see more policy alignment between political parties than we probably initially believed to be true.
If that happens, we'd all be delighted with that, right? Certainly. What then are your thoughts? And maybe this is not a direct responsibility of yours, but I mean, you talked about this construction site for the entire country, which is great if we can do that. There are many parts of our country, and I'm talking of the metropolitan areas, and I speak to you from Johannesburg right now, the a more significant city that's an absolute no-go area, right? Now, I know not all of it is falling under public works, but it would ultimately be in your interest that all of the decay in the downtown areas would be rebuilt. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the problem is, Ashraf, that there's been a lack of coordination around infrastructure development around the country. And, I think that it's done through the three spheres and maybe possibly not through a national effort that looks at infrastructure in its entirety and not sort of on a piecemeal basis. So one of the conversations I had with the Director General today is around how do we reimagine and refocus Infrastructure South Africa to possibly be the leading entity of infrastructure planning and development and execution for the country, so that Infrastructure South Africa is able to produce many more bankable projects than it does at the moment, to partner with the private sector so that we're able to leverage that and build more, and then be able to hand those projects back to whether it be the metros, provinces, or other departments on completion. So those are one of the things that we're going to look at, because without a coherent infrastructure plan for the country that looks at not just the metros, but also rural communities, water, electricity, roads, the whole pipeline of infrastructure development, I think we're going to continuously sell ourselves short and not be able to use infrastructure to kick the economy up into the higher percentage areas of growth that we're all desperately looking for.
And I mean, do you see that being driven from national down? And the second part, you can answer that, is how does that get funded if there's this massive construction site?
Well, Ashraf, I mean, I think that we've got to have a point where, as I said, infrastructure is conceptualized for the whole country. Because, if you've just got one region or one area that is focusing on infrastructure development, like the city of Cape Town or the Western Cape, the city of Cape Town was responsible, for 60% of all infrastructure investment at one point last year. It starts to create, an unequal or further unequal country than we already have at the moment. So I think that there's got to be some central planning and central view on infrastructure. The second point that I'd say is that if we're able to do that, we're able to create large-scale bankable projects that the private sector will partner with government and will invest with us.
All right, let's do this. Let me just put you. Let me get that response from you just right after this.
It can never be freezing cold with SABC Sport on board this July.
The 12 Nations battle in the Hollywood Bets Kasapa Cup will reveal the ultimate Southern African champs.
Mzansi's queens of the beautiful game display real passion in the Hollywood Bet Super League.
The Germans are in town as Vivian Wiesbaden tackles the Citizens and Stellies, while FC Augsburg clashes with TS Galaxy FC.
While Sport at 10 gives you a solid reason to stay awake on Wednesday nights.
TKO brings you in-depth analysis in the boxing world.
Top sport journalists table-thrilling conversations on the Jonas Vodcast. Meanwhile, Foot Afrique zooms into continental football.
Countdown to Paris goes downhill towards the Olympic Games Paris 2024, kicking off on 26 July.
NBA Lifestyle, Youth Sport Show, Goats Like Us, Final Analysis, EFC 115, and many more. Happy Madiba Month.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The reality is that 90% of South Africans don't save enough for retirement. This National Savings Month, why not be part of the 10% who do? Choose an interest rate of up to 12.6% after 60 months with the Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account. Anyone over 55 can open theirs via the Nedbank Money app in less than 2 minutes. Join the bank that's best for your savings goals. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Set in a gleaming new high-tech trauma center that deals with only the most serious cases, an emergency medical team must battle through the crucial first hour of care to save lives that hang in the balance. Each distinctive case is told with a thrilling intensity and nail-biting urgency as the team work on the very edge of the medically possible. This is a medical drama like no other. This is Critical. Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 11 June. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, we're chatting to our said Minister McPherson. He says, no, just call me Dean. So, Dean, you were giving me the number 2 point, just very quickly.
No, Ashraf, what I was saying is that, I think that we need a central, coordinated understanding of infrastructure development across the country so that we're able to create large-scale bankable projects that we can work with the private sector on. One of the interesting things I heard the other day is that pension fund managers only invest around 2% of their total pot into infrastructure development, but they're getting fantastic returns on them because, it is a good investment. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is how do we get more private sector funding from across the world and internally, domestically, to partner with government to invest in infrastructure.
And that, of course,
if we create
carry on. Sorry.
And if we create these bankable projects, I'm absolutely convinced that we can turn South Africa into that construction site, and that's got to be the goal, because we're not magically going to get to 3 or 4 or 5% growth, just by through sort of osmosis or magically doing so. It's going to be infrastructure led.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that because I'm going to leave you with the opportunity of now working on spending time to build South Africa, as you say. # Let's Build SA. So thank you for your time, Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Minister Dean McPherson. Appreciate your time. Lots of challenges there. Lots of important conversations have come out of that. We'll get to another conversation around the city of eThekwini, which should concern you right after this.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, you may be aware of this. The new cooperative governance MEC, that's Reverend Tulasizwe Buthelezi, placed the city of eThekwini under administration, sort of ASAP, right, as things, as you know, have not been going well there for quite some time. Now, the DA caucus leader is Tabani Mthethwa. He's welcomed the intervention, suggesting that it's been a long overdue action as Durban has been in a constant downward spiral. So we have on the line with us now the DA caucus leader, Tabani Mthethwa. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. You join us live on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to your listeners.
Thank you. So I see you've welcomed this intervention. Perhaps, how do you think this is all going to end then?
Look, we do welcome this intervention as a positive step in the right direction. However, we do feel that it is a long overdue position that should have been taken earlier than it has now. But nevertheless, we do welcome it. We hope and are encouraging all councillors of eThekwini across political parties to cooperate with the team that has been brought here to sort of assist with the advice and giving support to the municipality. Because at the end of the day, we can only hope that this is for the best and in the interest of the people of eThekwini.
What do you think has led to the decay of that city? I mean, we speak about the same thing about the city of Joburg, right?
Sorry, I lost you there.
What do you think has led to this decay in the city of eThekwini?
It's instability, both at a political level, the political leadership, and also administratively, in that there seems to exist a lot of political interference in the administration of the city. This leads to a lack of consequence management, where people who are underperforming, because they enjoy political protection, then there's no action taken against them. Otherwise, we are where we are because of lack of leadership, especially politically and administratively.
Now, I've noticed that Mike Sutcliffe, I think was the former city manager of Durban at that time, right, and Dr. Cassius Lubisi are two of the appointments that would lead this intervention, right? What do you think are the biggest challenges they face then?
Look, the challenge that they might face, which is something that we're going to fight tooth and nail as the DA to give them the necessary support, is the political resistance, because we do know that there are others in the political corners that are not happy with this intervention, because then it would expose the extent of the rot that exists in the city. But as the DA, we stand ready to support the team that comes here so that we can make sure that we turn things around in the interest of the people of our lovely city.
Okay. And also we speak in a very changing political climate, right? So perhaps if you can very briefly give us an insight into how things are working out right now in that city.
Look, we as the DA remain the official opposition in the city until such time that we are guided otherwise by our political principles in the party. But as it stands, we still remain the official opposition. But we stand ready, because I think the change, as you call it, in the political atmosphere in our country and province is such that we must all work together to bring about the necessary change and the delivery that our people pay for.
Is there anything, from your side that you'd like to add that you think we need to know in terms of how you see the direction going forward?
Look, going forward, we're going to make sure that those that do not do what they are employed to do are taken to task. And if need be, people must be fired, because at the end of the day, we can't afford a situation where the city is on a downward spiral and there are no consequences against the culprits. As I talk to you now, an embarrassing thing happened just yesterday, where we found out that it took the management of the Sharks to request and beg the city to clean around the Kings Park Stadium just because there's a big rugby match coming. Should it be that a basic service like cleaning, the businesses have got to beg the city to do? Because at the end of the day, people and businesses pay for this service. So that's very embarrassing. And we're going to make sure that going forward, people are held to account for lack of performance.
Well, I think it's a good point that, there's this rugby, so there's a sense of window dressing to make the place look very, very good. And unless we ensure we have a rugby test match every day of the week, that may well solve the problem. For now, let's leave it at that. Tabani Mthethwa, thank you for your time. DA caucus leader in the city of eThekwini. You live there. What do you think about your city? What's working? What's not working? What do you think about the plan to put it into administration now and the changes that city needs to implement to effect a whole move upwards from and reverse the downward spiral as has been alleged, right? Let's get the news headlines now with Daneo Matawang.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 4:30. Mpumalanga police have exhumed another body, that of a 3-year-old girl who was reported missing yesterday in Pinar, east of Mbombela. In other news, a large clinical trial in South Africa and Uganda has shown that a twice-yearly injection of a new drug provides young women with total protection against HIV infection. And the European Commission has confirmed that it will impose a significant increase in import taxes on electric vehicles brought into the EU from China. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, the problem on the Mike 1 going south through Joburg today is a lost load of what appears to be mealie meal down at Ormonde, down by Xavier Street. So very, very heavily backed up. Traffic queuing all the way back through to Glenhove Road in the Houghton Estate area. Just a warning, it's extremely heavy. So if you're moving out of Sandton, you want to get down towards Uncle Charlie's for connections to the south, for connections to Soweto, might be worth just hopping onto an alternative route today. Coming out of Pietermaritzburg, another busy one as you line up through to a crash scene down at Umlas Road today. The Carrot crash just before Umlas Road. Traffic back through Linfield Park and working back pretty quickly towards Ashburton. Also, the N3 at Marion Hill Plaza stays busy. That's a whole pile of traffic that was released from earlier blasting at Cliffdale. Just taking a little while to work through the plaza systems there. Cape Town Marine Drive, very slow. You won't be expecting this. You're going to sit from sort of, about Lagoon Beach area all the way through Milnerton, right through to the first set of lights at Sunset Beach. That's quite heavy. And there's a lengthy queue of traffic both directions around AZ Berman, going in and out of Mitchell's Plain through the My City bus construction. That's quite heavy today as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
So to me, in the previous bulletin, you sort of teased along about something about group stages or group announcements. Is that what you're talking about now?
Absolutely.
Right.
The Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers draw. Well, Bafana have been given somewhat a kind draw of the AFCON Nations qualifiers. SA were in pot 1 and they avoided all African giants and have been drawn in Group K alongside Uganda, Congo and South Sudan. Uganda is the biggest threat in the group as they have the highest ranked nation in East Africa, while Congo have struggled to establish themselves on the continent. Now, the qualifiers will start in September, where the first 2 matches will be played and followed by 2 more in October. Meanwhile, despite being eliminated early in the COSAFA Cup, Bafana coach Helman Kelele says that some in the 23-man squad have a role in future Bafana fixtures. Kelele stood in for Hugo Bruce at the original tournament in Gqeberha, but was unable to get the team past the group stages, even though South Africa managed draws against Mozambique as well as Botswana and beat Eswatini.
I would say, Mazwala, right now, as the technical staff, I'm quite happy with some of the boys that I have seen there, that I believe that they've raised their hands in terms of getting themselves closer, to the senior Bafana or the Bafana that plays qualifiers.
Elsewhere, Manchester United have triggered a 1-year extension in Erik ten Hag's contract to keep him at the club until 2026. The Dutchman's previous deal, which he signed was when he was appointed in 2022, was due to expire in 2025. Ten Hag has won 2 trophies in 2 years at Old Trafford. In motorsport, Oliver Bearman will become the 4th British driver on the Formula One grid next season after signing to race for the US-based Haas team. The 19-year-old, who impressed in finishing 7th in his F1 debut for Ferrari at this year's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, has signed what Haas calls a multi-year contract. Now, Bearman stood in for Carlos Sainz after the Spaniard was diagnosed with appendix despite not driving the car until the final practice. Sainz had driven on Friday. Bearman qualified 11th and finished 7th in the race. Then in rugby, captain Jamie George says that England have all the momentum going into their series in New Zealand and are confident of snapping a 21-year drought in the first test in Darden. Then George said that England have the requisite cohesion to upset the All Blacks on Saturday, something that they haven't achieved on New Zealand soil since 2003 after good progress in this year's Six Nations. Then in grassroots sports, Worcester, Florida in Roodepoort will host the 4th annual Schools Netball Challenge, which will see schools from around the country fight for the coveted title of the best netball team in the under-19 division. Now, the tournament has seen several graduates go on to represent South Africa in various competitions, including the Netball World Youth Cup Africa qualifiers and the Commonwealth Youth Games that took place in the island of Trinidad and Tobago last August. Now, the competition is divided in two streams, Botu and Ubuntu, which offer the same platform for schools in urban and rural areas to experience the sport on the same level. And it's going to take place on the 12th and the 13th of July. Well, that's it. It is a wrap from my side.
I'm just watching. I mean, the Minister of Sport, the other Minister of Sport, making points, and we spoke about the other day about getting people off gangsterism and getting them to play sport. But I mean, I have a sense he's going to do a school round, isn't it? He hasn't said so, but I clearly have a sense there's a lot of energy in what he does, and I can see him going to a whole lot of schools, mainly in impoverished communities. And I mean, that'll be a good thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I was listening to the Minister of Education today, and she was saying she had a chat with the new Minister of Sports, and she was saying they already had chats about how can they work together to make sure that school is somewhat compulsory. I mean, sports rather is somewhat compulsory in school. So great conversations that they're having. It'll be interesting to see how they're going to go about it, especially for schools in the previously disadvantaged areas or rural areas.
Well, I'll tell you what, previously disadvantaged remains disadvantaged until the time that they become advantaged.
Absolutely.
So they're very disadvantaged. I have no question about that. Yeah. Okay, more sport in an hour.
Righty.
Yeah, there we are.
If we have rights, shouldn't we also have opinions? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's talk numbers with Paswani Mphatlele, who's the Senior Portfolio Manager at Markway Fund Managers. Good chatting as always. Let's get to local and global markets.
Afternoon, Ashraf, and to all your listeners. Looking at today's market activity, it was subdued as our counterparts in the United States observed a holiday, resulting in lower trading volumes. And this has left the market participants shifting their focus towards some of the political developments in Europe, the release of the European Central Bank policy minutes, which played a pivotal role in helping shape investor sentiment. The minutes suggesting that potential rate cuts in the near future will be coming through, and this has helped support optimism about further monetary policy easing later in the year. Although the U.S. messaging was slightly different, however, based on the economic data that has been pointing to a slowdown, increasing likelihood of future rate cuts for the Federal Reserve. And these global developments have spurred a buying spree in risk assets, with investors globally seeking higher returns amid the accommodative monetary policy stance that is taking shape in the second half of the year. We see locally here, the JSE has reached the record highs as there is being buying of shares, optimism growing, and the recent political transition to a new administration has been met with positive sentiment. We see it on at the provincial level. It is also taking shape, and this has just renewed the focus on accelerating economic growth initiatives. Commodity markets has showed some strength, supported by a weaker US dollar, which fell again today, and this depreciation was boosted some of the commodity prices, making them more attractive to international buyers. We see the likes of gold was up 0.2 at $2,360 an ounce, platinum up 1.3 at $1,011 an ounce, oil up 0.1 at $87.18 a barrel. When you look at the general markets that were open, Asia was trading higher today. Europe markets, FTSE up 1%, DAX up 0.3, CAC up 0.7, JSE up 0.5, supported by resources up 0.8, industrials and financials were up 0.3. And when we look into the currency market, the South African rand fared much better today. That's the back of dollar weakness at 18.25 against the dollar, and 19.71 against the euro, and 23.28 against the pound. Ashraf.
Okay, well, that's it. Thanks for your time. Much appreciated. We will chat again tomorrow. Paswane Mphatlele. Right. I'll take your calls, in fact, right after this.
Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Absolutely. Let's have those great conversations. We certainly need to have the conversation that moves the country, like every single day, and therefore reflects the national pulse. Someone saying, let me just pick up this one here. Ashraf, I'm from Durban, saying about the water meters. It's Durban Roshni from Chatsworth. Yeah, give your names. It really helps when you do that, right? And here's another one. Picking up on the conversation I just had around Tekwini. Ashraf, Durban, Tekwini's city. The city's filthy. It stinks. It's dangerous. Absolutely heartbreaking. That comes from Val. Thanks for that feedback, although it's not good news. By the way, wherever you're listening from, Durban, Cape Town, whether you're listening from Amsterdam, if you're in London, I certainly want to know about it. Perhaps if you're in Vietnam as well, or China, just tell me. People listening, live streaming, listening on radio. You can also catch us on the new SABC Plus app. It's a fascinating app. We'll talk about that at 5:20 today, by the way. So tell me where you're listening from. I'd love to know. I need to get some calls. Dumila on the line. Hi, Dumila.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Good afternoon.
I want to try to make it quick. I want to say, for me, it seems like the GNU seems to be a conglomerate of political corporations. And the reason I say that is because, it seems to have an intention of monopolizing the spirit of the Constitution. Because if it was normally in business, businesses don't conglomerate to close out other business out of shelf space, Like in the case of KZN, where NK, people chose to buy from the NK 45%. But then they are closed out because of the conglomerate of political corporations. I will call them that. And I wonder if you were to put a case like this in the Competition Commission, if it was something that falls into their jurisdiction, how would they basically, judge it? Because it seems like a mafia government, where even in areas where people have chosen to buy from another business, but then they are somehow systematically maneuvered out. It doesn't make sense, So I don't know what you think about that.
So wait, are you saying that what we have is a mafia government? Did I hear that correctly?
It sounds exactly like that. Take it like this. With OPEC, the way OPEC operates, it seems this is exactly what has happened in South Africa in the political space.
Okay.
Because
excepting people
no
do sign up
for other free businesses to operate. Like I would call them businesses.
Okay, I hear you.
Voters are buyers.
Although people sign up voluntarily, like for example, the DA is part of national, they choose not to be part of provincial.
Exactly.
You know about the MK, you know about the others. Yeah, so it should be like that.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, that's exactly what politics and business is the same. They are voluntary things. But when you maneuver other businesses out of the shelf space, because you can somehow sit in one table and then decide on certain issues that will kick another business out, even though other people have chosen to buy from that business, and majority so, especially in KZN. And then you find people complaining in Johannesburg that they are being kicked out even though they are 30%. What about the business that's kicked out in KZN where people have chosen to buy from 45% of them?
Okay. Thank you for raising those points, Dumila. Let's get to Kurt in Cape Town. I wonder when someone's going to talk about the Gauteng GPU. Turk certainly wants to do that. Kurt rather wants to do that. Kurt, hi.
Hi, Ashraf. Yes, the KZN, the Gauteng situation.
Yeah.
I didn't hear, or I might have missed it, but I didn't hear anything from the Premier regarding the fact that the DA voted for him to be the Premier, and he's now turned his back, appears to be, has turned his back on the DA. And I haven't heard anything to that effect, or him being questioned about the agreement to have him as Premier based on forthcoming or ongoing negotiations for cabinet posts in the legislature.
Well, I mean, clearly he was elected as part of a grouping. That's why initially when the DA's, the deputy speaker was from the DA. But I mean, as you know, a lot has changed in a few days in that province.
Yes, and it appears from the outside that he is a bit of a renegade in that he doesn't seem to be towing the party line from reports suddenly. So he seems to have gotten his way. So it just makes me wonder what the real situation is there. Has he been given carte blanche to do as he likes, or is there a more nefarious bigger picture that we are missing.
All right, I got that. I'm a bit reluctant, I'm a bit reluctant to sort of speculate based upon, as we said, reports. And I hear what you're saying, Kurt, right? But I will say this much, and I find it interesting, right? Because it's something I raised yesterday in the conversation with Tony Leon, who was part of the negotiations on behalf of the DA. And you can listen to that podcast. It's a fascinating one. And I did find it strange that they would negotiate a national deal and then not negotiate a provincial deal at the same time across the board.
Absolutely.
So they left,
Especially
but I mean, that's all the parties. All the
health
parties are to
situation.
blame for that. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, okay, thanks for that call. But I mean, here's the point, Kurt. So having left the parties to negotiate their provincial deal on their own, it's very difficult then for the parties, ideally for them to be aligned to the national. That seems to be obvious, but it's not that obvious all the time. And I likened it to the fact that, Tony Leon made the point about you're selling a house without a value of the price. And I said, well, it's like selling a house and then one bedroom in the house is left to your child to sell on their own to somebody else. Like, the practicalities are just a no. So I don't really know what's happened there, excepting I understand that the DA even today have left the door even open now, and perhaps from the 3 seats they would give, or the executive seats to the DA, let me get that right, the ANC has left the door open for the DA to still rejoin, and instead of the 3 seats, maybe up it to 4, provided, according to the minister, the Premier, provided he gets the national buy-in to that one. So maybe, just maybe, at this point in time, it's a minority government. Banyaza Lesufi argues that it's not the case. That could well change in a matter of days, the way I see it, because the practicalities right now of making decisions in the Gauteng province, is really, it is troublesome. There's no question about that. Thanks for that call.
And it seems to have shot himself in the foot.
Well, I don't know. We don't know until we know. I get that. Thanks for that, Kurt. Let's get to Motherwell now. And Vuyo's on the line. Hello, Vuyo. I'm glad you're talking about water, because it's a big issue that we need to raise here on the show.
Hello, Ashraf. How are you doing? Are you right?
I'm very good indeed. Right. What's your point?
Yeah, my point is that nothing is going to help, man. Nothing is going to happen. It doesn't matter where do I start. We already have a problem. And this problem is like everywhere. All of us, water, electricity, everything, the whole country. Because this started somewhere. Right there in Motherwell. And then nothing has been answered. There are no answers, nothing.
All right, I got that. I heard what you're saying. Nothing's going to help. Now, the reason I'm stopping only because we can't hear you very clearly. Unfortunately, I'd love to have got you on a better line, but I got the gist of what you're saying. Nothing's going to help. Well, I think... Let me put it this way to all of you, right? Let me put it this way to all of you. I think one of the issues, having a conversation with the city of Joburg yesterday and the day before around water shortages in many suburbs, it's very clear there are many parts of the country that have serious water problems. So let me put this challenge out to you, wherever you may be. You could be in Motherwell, you could be in Hammanskraal, you could be in Galeshewe, you could be somewhere in the Northern Cape, thinking about Kimberley, wherever you are. If you have a water problem that's beyond the obvious leak for 1 or 2 hours, where it's just beyond what you expect as a citizen or a resident of a certain community, I want to know about it. We want to know about it because we want to actually have our eye on water. We really need to do that. So let me know about your water problem. 086 000 2032 and then WhatsApp 0614 104 107. Here's a question about load shedding. 100 days? Certainly not, according to somebody else.
Ashraf, here in Joburg we have load shedding every day. I don't really know where you guys live. Some parts of Joburg, like Alberton, Joburg Central, Alexandra, so many areas actually. I think Soweto as well. We have load shedding every day. Every day. Power goes and we're struggling. Yeah, big time. It started just early June. I think it was around 2 June. Yeah, load shedding is there. So
Right, that's a comment I've heard from some people. So there's no official load shedding. But then what about this?
Hi Ashraf, I know I've raised this issue on your program before and other programs. I am confused. Why is Eskom saying that we do not have load shedding? Why are we having the lights and electricity off 2 hours, 2.5 hours every day? What do we call that? who is doing it if it is not Eskom? Thank you.
Well, I mean, just a quick answer. I think load shedding, a power cut is a power cut. Power failure is power failure. Load shedding is a planned reduction to avoid a bigger power failure. It doesn't mean there are no power failures. In fact, Joburg's had a load reduction. And I did put it, I think, to a representative from one of the organizations a few weeks ago to say, well, in fact, in practical terms, for a person who's got no power for 5 hours, they don't care what you call it. They're just like, hey, the lights are out, man. If the lights are out, the lights are out. Don't waste my time calling it load shedding or load reduction. There's no lights here. That's it. And so I hear what you're saying. There's certainly more people wanting to comment about load shedding, suggesting it still exists. But let's get into another issue that I think is really important, the issue of whistleblowers and their role in society, simply to uplift social development. Let's talk about that next.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so, whistleblowing is such an important issue in terms of raising issues. There's also been the counter-argument about the lack of protection for whistleblowers, but it doesn't stop the important role they play. There's a sense that they are a catalyst, or they should be a catalyst for social development. Now, here's the thing. There's the 2023 Corruption Perceptions Index by Transparency International says that South Africa continues to be negatively perceived as corrupt, falling into the category of flawed democracy. So I don't like that, but I hear what they're saying, right? The question is, how do we fix our country? So there's a sense that, and it rather sounds bizarre when you talk about fixing up social development issues, that load shedding would, rather not load shedding, you'll see they are getting mixed up with load shedding and whistleblowing, but certainly whistleblowing is an important catalyst. So let's get the thoughts then of Dr. Ulyesa Radulovic, who's a senior postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg's Department of Sociology. Dr. Radulovic, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hi, Ashraf. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So it's an interesting take when we talk about whistleblowing being this catalyst for social development. Explain what you mean.
So whistleblowing or the act of disclosure has the capacity to highlight wrongdoings to people that have the capacity to effect change. Some information or data that wouldn't necessarily be known to the broader public. So they bring this information into the public domain, and then these mechanisms that are in place that can effect change, such as regulators, for example, use these disclosures to address instances of corruption. And it's particularly important in the context of South Africa.
Yeah, okay. So how prevalent is the art of disclosure or whistleblowing, as we call it? Like what I'm saying as a percentage of population?
So I don't have concise numbers about the percentage, but what I do know is that there are increasing degrees of prevalence. During apartheid, the act of disclosure wasn't common. It was an uncommon act. But post-transition, with the new constitution and the implementation of the Protected Disclosures Act later on, what happened was we saw higher rates of disclosure. So it is a growing phenomenon, and we see it happening the world over.
And have you then seen examples in South Africa specifically where this growing phenomenon actually transforms society, and I would think for the better, right?
Yes, absolutely. If we think about Cynthia Stimple's disclosure and how she blew the whistle on SAA, and it was her disclosure that led to an urgent interdict that stopped a fraudulent 256 million rand transaction. So that's one case, and that saved taxpayers' money directly. So yes.
There's also, and there's a common downside to that, and I think I went to the Whistleblower Awards a few months ago, in fact, and again, the important role that, just people play, even the media plays as whistleblowers, right? The downside of that is the lack of protection that they have, isn't it, or they receive. So their lives are in danger, and often they lose their lives as well. It's been well documented.
Absolutely. So that's one risk. Not one risk, but there's a multitude of risks that South African whistleblowers face across various forms of retaliation. And one element that is to blame is that of lackluster legislation. There is a guideline, a global guideline for adequate legislation, what provisions should be in legislation. Currently, the South African Protected Disclosures Act is in desperate need of revisions. And there are reports, statistical reports that have done an analysis of this.
So in terms of the overall Corruptions Perceptions Index, I mean, it's interesting it's called the Corruptions Perceptions Index as opposed to the Corruptions Index, right? Is there a big difference in the two in terms of how we perceive perceptions versus reality?
So I wouldn't be able to comment if there is a difference between the two. But the Corruption Perceptions Index is a globally accepted measure, and it's a measure that we're using the world over that indicates towards corruption and maybe backsliding in terms of corruption rating or corruption index. So I think that it is a measure that needs to be given attention to and taken seriously.
Just lastly then, going back to the introduction about how do we fix the many things that are wrong in our country, right? What then is your suggestion going forward now? I mean, throwing in the role of potential whistleblowers, which is everybody listening, because I mean, this is the national pulse.
Absolutely. So I think that the first and foremost is revising legislation, and I think that there is some headway in that. They're trying to make headway in revised legislation. The second is potentially with this new GNU, seeing whether we can pass a new Chapter 9 institution that would either focus specifically on whistleblowers or specifically on anti-corruption. And the third important aspect is collaboration, and it's collaboration on a large level, collaboration between academia, civil society, ordinary citizens, media such as yourself, and the government, of course.
Okay, that's where we shall leave it. Dr. Ulyesa Radulovic, who is the Senior Postdoctoral Research Fellow at the University of Joburg's Department of Sociology. It's an important question, the role of whistleblowers as a catalyst effectively to transform society. And this comes in the light of the 2023 Corruption Perceptions Index that certainly does not put South Africa in a good light at all on a range of issues. Let's get to some voice notes as well that we have. And it continues about... well, here's the issue about Eskom. So 100 days tomorrow, no load shedding, right?
Afternoon, Ashraf. It's Hamilton here. I saw your poll on X, and then I was like, we cannot congratulate a fish for swimming, can we? So Eskom's duty is to supply electricity. So they're doing what they are there for. So I don't know. Because that's their duty, to supply electricity, not for 3 days or 100 days, but to supply electricity until there is no Eskom. But because they're still there, so they're doing what they are supposed to do, supply electricity. That's Hamilton. Have a good afternoon, Ashraf.
Thanks for that, Hamilton. I hope you voted on that X or tweet that I put out. Well, I think you're right in a sense that if they're doing their job, that's what they should be doing. But I'll tell you what the difference is. You can congratulate new leadership when they rescue something that is sinking. So the boat should not sink in the first place. But if it is sinking and you have a new team of rowers that somehow get on board and they're able to patch the boat up in whichever way they can, then at the very least, when they get to shore, you're going to say, hey, thank goodness you did a great job. It is in that context. Remember, the context is what was it before? From sinking to being rescued. That's the part I think one needs to acknowledge, right? Here's a question on the DA.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Kwane Baji here at Cholong outside of East London. I just wish and pray that DA can stage a motion of confidence just now so that ANC can get in their thick skull that they didn't win. They didn't win. Panyada doesn't have to be the premier of Gauteng. DA must put a motion just now to get rid of them. People are tired of ANC. Sharp.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and we're talking Gauteng province, right? I think the conundrum is for that to carry through, the DA would need the support of two parties. One is called the EFF, the other one is called the MK party, and I don't think they want to help the DA get rid of the ANC. Can you see the complexities of South African life? By the way, we're going to talk to the Basic Education Minister, the DA Basic Education Minister now. We'll chat to her just after the news, so listen out for that conversation. Let's get to the news now. It's 5 o'clock.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. The top stories at 5. A missing child's body exhumed in Mpumalanga and a breakthrough HIV prevention trial raises hopes. A very good afternoon. Please note that the following story may offend sensitive listeners, including children. Police in Mpumalanga have exhumed another body, that of a 3-year-old girl who was reported missing yesterday in Pinar, east of Mbombela. Peaceful Khoza went missing from her home yesterday. Police say locals apprehended a man who was burning human body parts. The angry residents accosted the man, who later showed them where he had also buried 6-year-old Junior Babandla, who went missing last month. The suspect is currently in hospital under police guard. The body of little Mabandla was exhumed last night. 2 murder dockets are being investigated. Police spokesperson Donald Mdluli says the remains of the 3-year-old girl have been positively identified by her family.
For now, we can indicate from the remains that were just been exhumed, the family has pointed out on the things that he was wearing and also from the body that they saw that indeed is their child. Hence, now a case of murder is being investigated. Remember, the guy is still apprehended. He has not yet been charged, but we believe in due course that he will be charged not only for this crime, however, also with the other one.
A large clinical trial in South Africa and Uganda has shown that a twice-yearly injection of a new drug provides young women with total protection against HIV infection. The trial tested whether the 6-month injection of lenacapavir would provide better protection against HIV infection than 2 other pills which need to be taken daily. All 3 medications are pre-exposure prophylaxis drugs. UCT Professor of Medicine Linda Gale Becker was the principal investigator for the South African part of the study. She says the breakthrough gives great hope that a proven highly effective prevention tool to protect people from HIV has now been developed. The EFF in Gauteng says it is unimpressed by the reappointment of the same old ANC leaders into the government positions in the province. This follows the provincial cabinet announcement made by Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi. The Executive Council comprises 7 members of the ANC and 1 each from the IFP, the PA and Rise Mzansi. All the 7 ANC MECs are from the previous administration. The DA has decided to remain an opposition party in the province. The EFF's Dumisani Baleni.
Most importantly, the EFF clearly articulated its intentions and readiness to enter into government before and after elections. This is because we strongly believe that the interests and aspirations of our people can be advanced only by the capable and dedicated leadership of the economic freedom fighters. The EFF remains the only ideologically and politically reliable alternative in the fight against capitalism, racism, corruption, and poverty. However, we respect the will of the voters in that while they have rejected the ANC, they did not give us a solid mandate to form a government on our own.
A team of South African scientists and conservationists are inserting radioactive material into the horns of rhino in an effort to curb poaching. Last year, 499 rhino were lost to poaching in the country. The Rhizotope project inserts a carefully measured amounts of radioactive material into the rhino horn with no harm to the animal. It's hoped that this will reduce the horn's desirability as a commodity. Radioactive treated horns are also more likely to be detected at international borders. The Rhizotope project's Professor James Larkin.
We drill and insert isotopes into the horn of the rhino, and we do this for 2 very specific reasons. The first is to devalue the rhino horn in the eyes of end users. People have a sort of natural, visceral fear of something that might be radioactive because they don't understand it. And we use that to our advantage because we'll be telling the world, hey, look, rhino horn from Africa is quite possibly going to be radioactive. And we know that rhino horn in the Far East is used as a gift and demonstration of high value and high wealth.
And the European Commission has confirmed that it will impose a significant increase in import taxes on electric vehicles brought into the EU from China. Starting on Friday, the tariffs will initially be imposed for 4 months, after which member states will vote on whether to make them permanent. The EU believes that China's electric vehicle industry receives significant state subsidies. China denies this and has threatened retaliation. Here's the EU Commission's Eric Mema.
There are significant interests, industrial interests and employment interests in Europe, and our investigation has clearly shown that there is damage being done through these unfair practices by China to the interests of EU industry.
The top story at 5 o'clock, Mpumalanga police have exhumed another body, that of a 3-year-old girl who was reported missing yesterday in Pinar, east of Mbombela. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemeli.
In your sports this hour, Chippa United unveil Andile Jali and England captain confident of snapping New Zealand rugby drought. More details at 5:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It is super heavy going south on the bike one in Joburg. Today it's a lost load of Millie Meal down at Ormonde by Xavier Street. The traffic is incredibly heavy. It's backed all the way through to Glenhove Road, sort of Melrose Estate area. You might want to avoid that if you're trying to get to Uncle Charlie's or down home towards Soweto. Stay off the Mike 1 South. It's seriously going to hold you up. Also quite a big crash leaving the airport heading to Boksburg. It's the R21 at the N12. 3 lanes are closed and quite a bit of pressure back towards Griffiths Road in the Jet Park area. If you're Durban bound coming out of Pietermaritzburg, it's another tough afternoon to crash down at Umlas Road. Traffic now back through to Linfield Park and back towards Ashburton. So you may want to just leave Pietermaritzburg a little bit later today. And Cape Town, top story, there is no traffic lights on Marine Drive at Sunset Beach. It's the first lights, it's Ocean Way that are down. That backlog is also extreme. It's right back parking back into Pardon Island. So you've got options N1 Service Road to the N7, or you've got the Kuiberg Road option as alternative routes home to that Bloberg Tableview Parklands area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
In South Africa, 1 in 5 children under the age of 13 is overweight or obese. Sign a petition to demand strong warning labels on unhealthy packaged food. And don't forget to catch the next episode of Chew on This at healer.org on Thursday, 27 June from 3 p.m. Young people tell us how big food companies are feeding them lies.
Set in a gleaming new high-tech trauma center that deals with only the most serious cases, an emergency medical team must battle through the crucial first hour of care to save lives that hang in the balance. Each distinctive case is told with a thrilling intensity and nail-biting urgency as the team work on the very edge of the medically possible. This is a medical drama like no other. This is Critical. Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 11 June. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime only on S3. Open up.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So now we'll be chatting about the SABC Plus app, and it's a newly developed app, very, very innovative, and that can change your life in terms of your viewing and listening habits. So listen out for that conversation coming up in the innovation slot that we have just after 20 past 5. Right. Further thoughts that you have, many people commenting, and I'll put this to you even now. What for you, do you live in an area, in a community where there's extended issues, not of load shedding, but of water problems? Because we want to get to the grips of just how many cities or suburbs or towns or communities or municipalities in our country are affected by extended absence of water, or even not even clean water. That means what is a basic right, a human right, is just not existent for many. So let's see how big a problem is it, because if that's the case, then we need to get to you and talk to your community about that. So feel free to connect with me, because it is the National Pulse, 086 000 2032. And then you can WhatsApp 0614 104 107. People commenting on the Twitter feed as well. Feel free to do that. SFM Radio and myself on the Twitter or X platform. Ask questions, give comments, use that hashtag, the National Pulse. I certainly want to pick out your thoughts from there. Right. Okay. We've been saying this speaking to as many ministers, and we plan to do as many in the next few days as we can. We initially had a chat with the minister in terms of land reform, the PA, rather not say PA. We had the Minister of Land Reform coming up in the initial parts of the program. That was very interesting in terms of where they sit in, right? That was one part of it. Then we moved on to other issues around public works that we talked about, which I think is just as important. And now the third one in the segment just for today would be around the issues of basic education. I think it's a critically important issue, as just all those things are, right? So let's talk about that. We have with us now the Minister of Basic Education, Minister Siviwe Garuba. So good chatting to you. And again, like I've told others, hello, Minister. How does that sound for you?
Sounds still very strange, Ashraf, but yeah, I mean, I suppose it's just been over 24 hours. But perhaps it will start sounding normal soon. But other than that, I've been buried in paperwork and reading up about the sector and really orientating myself as much as possible.
Okay, now, before when we spoke to a minister, and I'm going back over the years in my various stints in different media houses, it would always be like the minister, and your assumption is it's a minister of this very unified government. Now we find a strange situation. So, for example, when I spoke land reform, we're talking to the PAC, then we have the DA Minister of Public Works, and then we now have another DA Minister talking to you, to me right now, right? And I've noticed that again, there's been pockets of criticism from different people. Like, why would you have a basic minister of education who's from the DA? Like, why not somebody else? How do you respond to that in a way that is convincing to a very skeptical audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of South Africans are perhaps skeptical in the sense that they haven't always received the kind of service that they require from the basic education department. But the reality is that access to public education in South Africa has not always been realized in terms of the Constitution. And I want to assure South Africans that I am not stepping into this role to advance any.
Do I have you there? I think we have just lost the minister. Just for a moment, let's see if we can connect with some questions. Sam, I got your question from the Eastern Cape. I'll raise it with the minister as soon as we get her back on board. And again, there's a couple of people commenting about water. I want to just see where the regions are. They're not exactly expressing where the regions are. But I'll tell you what, while we're reconnecting with the issue of the minister, here's another issue around load shedding.
Ashraf, good afternoon. There is no such a thing as there is no load shedding. There is still load shedding, but it's not as at that magnitude as they shut down like most areas. But we do get load shed. In our townships, in like weekly, maybe 3 times, 4 times in a week, we do get load shed. So it's just they don't announce it anymore to say, hey, load shedding, what. But load shedding is still there.
It's like what you're saying. If you call a cat a dog, then they expect us to believe it's a dog and not a cat. Is that what you're saying? I hear what you're saying. I think it doesn't mean you're right. Not that people are not struggling with issues of power failures. They certainly are, right? So how's this one?
Afternoon, SFM and the listeners. What I've noticed is a greediness to those politicians, nothing else. We've got parties like DA, you no longer talk about a bloated cabinet, but now they're part of it. Also, they can represent the people. They just need the positions. They're fighting over positions. And we've got like the MK party, who said the elections were rigged. All of a sudden, they change now. They joined the party as well now, in the gravy train. They're in there also now. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know about the gravy train, but I mean, people are asking the questions, what happened to those 9 million votes that apparently disappeared, right? Okay, let's get back then to my conversation with the Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Garuba. Hopefully a better line this time. So once again, Minister, good chatting to you. I was asking about the skeptics first off. How you respond to those who are skeptical, yes?
Thank you. I apologize. There's been an issue with reception all day. Firstly, I think I want to assure people that despite my political party, that is the Democratic Alliance, I'm not going to be using the Department of Education and the work that needs to be done there for political ends. My political party is on but one thing. I'm here as the Minister of Basic Education, and I'm here to serve the 14 million learners in this country who all deserve access to quality education, which has not always been available to them, Ashraf. There are issues in South Africa such as about 80% of grade 4 learners who cannot read for meaning, children who are still dying in pit toilets 30 years into our democracy, teachers who are working in unsafe conditions. These are all things that require my urgent attention, along with the Deputy Minister and along with the team there, but also along with the MECs in the various provinces. And so what I want to assure people is that I'm here to deliver a service that has been entrusted on me by the Constitution and an oath that I took. And I'm also not here to just do this alone. I'm here to do this with stakeholders, civil society, to do this with the team in the department, to do this with expert industries, industry experts. And so that's the assurance that I can give.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, you say that you'd like, and I'm quoting you'd like to put learners at the center of what we do. Now, that sounds very honorable, but it does also imply that learners have not been at the center of all that we do. That is a cause for concern, right?
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, I think, access to basic education, as I said, hasn't always been, realized. And I think that's something that's enshrined in the Constitution. So I do stand by that I want us to remind ourselves why we do what we do, whether we are educators, whether we are politicians, whether we are officials. Ultimately, it's the learner, and getting a learner from now an early child development center all the way to grade 12 to stay in the system, so that we don't lock an entire generation of poor Black children to a future of poverty because they haven't had access to good quality education. So that's what I mean by that we must always remember why we're doing what we're doing. This department has massive implications if we are able to really do something significant, because we can turn around the lot of millions of South Africans who are still languishing in poverty today.
Well, since we're talking education, report card is very important. What would you score the report card of the Department of Education at this point in time?
Look, I first of all, I mean, I'm still orientating myself with the department, and I think I had a very good conversation with the former minister Angie Motshekga, and we're going to be meeting and having a handover from her in the next week. I think it's important to mix continuity, experience, and essentially what's been in the department with fresh ideas that I may have. And so, yes, of course, I've been particularly critical of the department, particularly as it pertains to the numeracy and literacy rates, and as it pertains to the prevalence of pit toilets in a province like my home province in the Eastern Cape. But now I'm in a unique opportunity to be able to do something about that. And so for me, I want to work with the team in the department, and I want to essentially start getting some of these deliverables. Ashraf, we shouldn't only be focusing on matric results as the pinnacle of success for the department. That is only at the end of a child's schooling career. There are many things that we need to get right, and obviously matric results are about one of them. We need to look and see is the curriculum readying learners for the future economies? Are our learners learning something of value, and are we assessing them well? Are we capacitating our teachers to be able to teach our learners well? So those are the things that for me are pertinent, and I'm wanting to really hopefully inspire some of the officials and the senior management team that I'm going to be working with to say that these are the things that we must please champion, because they are urgent.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the issue of matric results, because I mean, you're quite right. There's a big focus on the actual results, but as we also know, the bigger issue is the absence of people who don't even get to matric in the first place, right? And it's a glaring omission in terms of just the absence of that sort of conversation. And what do we need to do to ensure that every learner who gets in at grade 1 gets out at grade 12, isn't it?
Absolutely. We need to be able to track learners when they enter the system to when they exit. Of course, there are many exit points, and some learners can exit to go and pursue, to go into TVET colleges. But we must know about that. We must know that they've gone into further training, but we must not, there are many, many learners, and we must be honest about it. And this is essentially really what I'm going to try and do very differently in Parliament as I account to Parliament. Be brutally honest about where things are going wrong. Where are we losing learners? Why are we losing learners? And of course, some of these things are beyond the Department of Education. There are social ills, there's socio-economic state issues. But I need to also work with my colleagues in cabinet to agitate for change. My colleague the Minister of Public Works, Minister McPherson, needs to come to the table, and he's already agreed that we need to tackle the issue of pit toilets.
Yeah.
The Minister of Transport will be hearing from me about in the rural areas, making sure that there are roads so that scholar transport can move. And so those are the things that I want to be honest with South Africans about, that this is the state of education, but these are the markers of success that you can expect from us.
Well, I mean, would it be fair to say if I said to you, because I understand you're in the job, but I mean, I can pronounce to say anecdotally, it seems like we're currently in that our state of basic education is an F, it's a fail, or it's like above 50 or sitting in the 40%. The question is, how then do you get it to the 80s plus for the entire country?
How we get it there is by doing a number of things that are multi-pronged. The first one, Ashraf, which I really want to do, and I want to do quickly, is I want to invite stakeholders, industry experts, civil society, trade unions, and other stakeholders, SGB bodies, into a consultative forum, which the minister is empowered to do. And I want us to pick up the conversation and to pick up the work of curriculum review, because I think that becomes very important. Our system in South Africa has not had a system review. We have, but pieces of legislation here and there that seek to fix certain things, like for instance infrastructure, which is important. But we haven't looked at the entire system, which looks at how is the curriculum equipping a learner from being able to go into to be active participant in the economy. How are the conditions of teaching for educators? What are some of the issues that are affecting students that are dropping out? And I know that work had begun before, but I would like that work to have serious recommendations that can be implemented. And then I can sit down with my 9 MECs and say, colleagues, these are the recommendations that have been given to us. Let's give ourselves timelines and let's start the process of this review. It's not pretty. It's not going to allow us to go and cut ribbons. It's going to inflict pain in the sense that some people will not necessarily like it because change is difficult. But it's important, Ashraf, because we are lagging behind our peers on the continent and in other parts of the world when it comes to literacy, numeracy, and it comes to equipping our learners.
And I think it's a given. I mean, therefore, we then lag behind global competitiveness as a country because we lack it as a people. That's important. So here's a question from Sam in the Eastern Cape that's so related to my next point, which is, please ask the Minister of Basic Education about her views on salary teachers that they earn and should, and I'm paraphrasing, basically suggesting they need more. Now, I know, interesting, I had a conversation today, and the amount of young South African teachers or are in places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Al Ain, and the primary motive, besides like a so-called better quality of life, is like they're earning phenomenal salaries. Like there's a sense, and what came through is like teachers are undervalued in South Africa, in spite of the fact that the importance of education we all concur with. What do you feel about that?
I want to firstly to assure Sam that under my tenure we certainly want to appreciate educators and the work that they do and the tremendous amount of work they do under difficult circumstances. Of course, this is a conversation I also need to in terms of salaries. I need to have that conversation with the Minister of Public Service and Administration, but also I need to have a briefing from the department and the Minister of Finance. And those things I still need to be briefed on about where the salaries are. Are they competitive? Do people get their rural allowances when they're teaching in rural areas and some of these things? But it's also important when I say let's put the learner at the center of it. The learner can't be put at the center of it if the teacher and the educator is also not resourced and equipped.
and is not well looked after.
Absolutely.
Because without the backbone of the system, which is our teachers, our educators, then we're not going to have a system to begin with. So I don't want people to see my saying we need to put the learner at the center as exclusionary of talking about the teachers and the conditions under which teachers work. I want them to see that this is an ecosystem that needs to ultimately serve the 14 million learners in our current education system.
Well, we certainly hope you get that right. I think it's very important. I mean, would you say that if I call in business or marketing speak, if I call what we're experiencing now as a government as a disruptor, because government, as we know, it has been disrupted, right, because of the results of the election. And suddenly we're speaking to different people, different voices, different ideas. If we apply the same principle of disruption of our education system, what's the one thing you'd want to disrupt to really jolt us into a new sense of being?
Essentially, it's the curriculum review for me, because I think that we need to have a very critical eye on how is the quality of the education that we are delivering in our system up to par with the certain, especially with global standards. And can we confidently say when learners get to grade 4, they'll be able to read for meaning? It is shocking to me that almost 80% of kids in South Africa cannot read for meaning at the age of grade 4 by the time they get to grade 4. And that speaks to system failures along the way, Ashraf. And I think for me, that curriculum review becomes very, very important, because otherwise an entire generation of poor Black children are not going to be able to be active participants in the economy. And that's the reality. The reality here is, of course, there's 14 million learners across all kinds of socioeconomic and various socioeconomic standards. But it is the poorest people who cannot afford to privatize education, who rely on the state for everything, including the access to education, that for me need to be able to be assured that just because I live in Bizana, just because I live in Kwakwa, doesn't mean that my child is getting a less than education than somebody who lives in a city, who lives elsewhere. And that, for me, is going to be the biggest disruptor and the biggest equalizer in the kind of unequal South Africa we find ourselves in.
I mean, we have a sporting example we spoke about yesterday with Tumi, the sports anchor here, to say when you have good cricketers in rural or township schools, they have to leave those schools to go to private or very upmarket schools in the big cities to finish to do their finishing of cricket. But that's a contradiction in terms. I mean, there has to be an investment where those schools in the rural areas are as good at cricket schools as elsewhere. Now, of course, that's cricket. I mean, we can apply the same principle to science and just about everything else, right? Here's a question from someone in Kalanga saying, please ask the minister if she's anti-unions, COSATU in particular. Quick answer on that one.
Absolutely not. Unions are a critical part and a critical stakeholder in the sector. I mean, without our unions, we wouldn't be able to do half the things that we do. And I look forward to engaging with SATU and other trade unions, because we find solutions. We're going to find solutions when we work together. So the quick answer is absolutely not. And I look forward to engaging with them.
All right, and lastly, you spoke about that you're not there to promote your party, but I find it incredibly difficult to even think one would do that, because you're effectively there on behalf of your party, ultimately speaking, right? And there's party policy and there's now government policy, and I understand that the ANC, for example, has been saying they're the leaders of the GNU. They've already put the point that the policy that's been put in place already, that's not going to change. How are you going to balance out the need to show off that your party can govern when given a chance versus the need to govern on behalf of the entire country with different parties?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think it's very important firstly to separate the GNU and the politics that need to be hashed out there, because with the GNU, we are still going to have a policy review and negotiation, so to speak. So that process is ongoing. And as parties to the GNU, we're going to have robust discussions with the ANC about where we stand on certain policy issues and where we can find each other. But what I do not want and cannot have is a situation where politics plays itself out in the department. Because for me, the core business of the department matters. So that's what I mean when I say I'm not going to be leading the department as just a DA minister, because that then creates the impression that somehow I'm not going to be taking into consideration the work that has been done, the good work that's been done, and not driving outcomes according to an objective way. We will have our party political discussions as the GNU, and they will be robust. But when it comes to the department and the work that we do there, the core business there is servicing the learner, is servicing the parents, and is actually looking after the educators. And I've got to be able to separate that.
Okay.
And I'm assuring South Africans that I can do so.
And that's where we're going to leave it. I think of the Pink Floyd song, I think it was, we don't need no education, or hey teacher, leave them kids alone. Now that's got to change. It's got to be, we need them education. So it's all the responsibility of the Minister of Basic Education to change that paradigm. Appreciate your time, Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Khwaruba. There you are. She has her own challenge. Can she get a distinction? It's that important. Let's get the news headlines now with Majupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines this hour, new Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Dean McPherson says there will be no lavish lifestyles for members of the executive and parliamentarians. Police in Mpumalanga have exhumed another body, that of a 3-year-old girl who was reported missing yesterday in Pinar, east of Mbombela. And the Ford Motor Manufacturing Company has approached the Labour Court in Joburg on an urgent basis to interdict the strike action at its facilities in Pretoria. A full news update at 6.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still pretty heavily backed on the mic one today from Houghton Estate all the way down to Omonde. A truck losing a load of milli meal across the highway at Xavier Street earlier today. A lot of pressure there. Ekurhuleni side's really busy. There's some really big traffic on the R21 heading north from the airport towards Pretoria. Long queues up through Pomona Road, through the Benoni exit up towards the end of the works at Bupsfontein Road. And also a crash on the R21 south at the N12. So if you're leaving the airport through to the Boksburg side, that's being quite a hold up as well. Coming out of Pietermaritzburg, good news. The crash scene at Umlos Road has been cleared. There is a backlog to work through, but it is working through pretty quickly. So it's a much better result than it was over the last hour or so. The M4, Ruthurst Highway, coming out of Durban, the crash just past Blue Lagoon, still causing some delays. And the Esplanade out of the city centre, looking quite heavy again towards the M4 highway. Cape Town, it's probably the busiest afternoon drive home that we've had for some time. Top story there is the traffic lights down on Marine Drive at Ocean Way in the Sunset Beach area. Long queues to Tableview, backlogging all the way through Milnerton back to Pardon Island. The Kuberg Road, the alternative route, is now fairly heavily backed as well. And motorists leaving the Muizenberg area, just note Baden-Powell out towards Strandfontein, quite slow, out passing that coastal park area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgabele.
Right, shall we talk sport?
Yes, so let's talk sports. Football to be exact this hour. Chippa United have unveiled former Morocco Swallows midfielder Andile Jali. Jali has been without a club since he left Swallows at the beginning of the season as part of their mass exodus. Since then, Jali has been on the sidelines without a club with a prolonged wait, drawing speculations on his playing future. So now the question is how he's going to perform in the next season. Meanwhile, Bafana have landed a kind draw for the Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers. SA, who were in pot 1, avoided all African giants and have been drawn in Group K alongside Uganda, Congo and South Sudan, with Uganda the biggest threat as they are the highest ranked nation in East Africa. Now, the qualifiers will start in September, where the first 2 matches will be played, followed by 2 more in October. Elsewhere, Manchester United have triggered a 1-year extension in Erik ten Hag's contract to keep him at the club until 2026. The Dutchman's previous deal, which he signed when he was appointed back in 2022, was due to expire in 2025. Ten Hag has won 2 trophies in 2 years at Old Trafford. In tennis, SA's Lloyd Harris has crashed out of Wimbledon after losing 6-4, 6-7, 7-6, 3-6 and 6-7 to Americans or 14th seed Ben Shelton in their second round match on court 18 at Wimbledon. Then in cricket, former long-serving Proteas woman coach Hilton Murring has been appointed as the head coach of the USA Women's Senior and Under-19 cricket teams. Murring ended an 11-year spell with Cricket SA as the head coach of the Proteas women in May and has now secured his next job in the United States. The 46-year-old led South Africa through a groundbreaking decade as he oversaw the professionalization of women's cricket in the country in 2014 before leading them through a series of major successes, including a maiden World Cup and the 2023 ICC Women's T20 World Cup on home soil. Meanwhile, Proteas coach Rob Walter says that the rapid progress by the national team in the past 18 months is reason for optimism. The Proteas won 8 of their 9 matches at the tournament, coupled with the winning 8 of their 10 at the ODI event last year, showing significant improvement, particularly in how they approach tournament play under Walter, who only took on the job last February. In motorsport, Oliver Bearman will become the 4th British driver on the Formula One grid next season after signing to race for the US-based Haas team. The 19-year-old, who impressed in finishing 7th on his F1 debut for Ferrari at this year's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, has signed what Haas calls a multi-year contract. Bearman stood in for Carlos Sainz after the Spaniard was diagnosed with appendix issues, and despite not driving the car until the final practice, Sainz had driven on Friday. Bearman qualified 11th and finished 7th in the race. With that said, it is a wrap from my side for SAFM Sport.
Okay. Well, you said your goodbyes already. I mean, you agree about the cricket coach? I mean, he's made a difference, right? And he's like unassuming, because you tend to think of like the bigger names, and he's not one of them, right?
He really has made a difference of some sort, and he's telling the truth that, listen, there is reason to be positive, as much as a lot of people would have loved the Proteas to win. But truth be told, they were in the final for the first time as the Proteas team, and they played against a team that knows how to play in a final and what is needed to win a final. So we can build on that.
And it's something I've said often, and it's not just about sport, in anything else. Like no country, no institution has a divine right to say we will be number one because we want to be number one. True. That means as you plot and plan and strategize to be number one in your business, in your sport, in whatever, there's somebody else doing the same thing.
True.
So out of 100 teams, let's call it that, 100 businesses, there's just one winner. You know, there is like that. So like as you sit here as a sports anchor, there's someone listening, and it's a crazy thing to say, like, I want to be in that, I want to actually do Tumi's job. I mean, Absolutely. That's the reality.
That is
so,
the reality.
So we have to accept that we're competing with each other.
And we can only just move forward from here on. The Proteas are back in the country. It's not the full team, because some others still have contracts with other franchises. But Cricket South Africa did promise that when the whole team is back together, we will celebrate them as a team.
Okay, there we are. More sports in a tomorrow, if I can call it that, not in an hour, in a tomorrow.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, Jimmy Moyaha, as always, talks money issues with the Money Web Market Update. Jimmy, what's on the show today? Hi.
Good evening, Ashraf. Good evening, Dumi, and good evening to the listeners. Markets today have been quite interesting. It seems as though resources had another good day moving forward. Not such a strong day, as strong a day as yesterday, but nonetheless, we finished in positive territory. And on the show today, we're going to be taking a look at some developments around the news that's been out in the media. We know that Convergence Partners has gone out to finalize that deal, or the purchase of Datacentrics. That deal has gone through the Competition Commission's hurdles. It looks as though everything is a go there. I've got a conversation with the chairman of Convergence Partners, Andile Ngawa, about that deal. The business last year in November acquired another business, so the Convergence Group is certainly on an acquisition drive at the moment, and it seems nothing is going to stop them from buying up good businesses. I've got a separate conversation with the ShopRite Group. They're launching an interesting new product, an e-commerce product for businesses. So if you are a spaza shop owner and you are looking to order from one of their cash and carry stores, you can then order within a 50-kilometer radius. They'll deliver all of your stock to you for free within that 50 kilometers, and we're going to look at that innovation and how it's helping small businesses stay sustainable. And then there's a conversation around the efforts by government to renegotiate the coal pact. The coal pact, if you remember, there was a lot of speculation around how we achieve this just energy transition, and part of that was to say we will close down certain, or we will decommission certain coal-fired power stations, and in exchange for that we had commitments from other countries around these are the funds they will allocate towards South Africa for a just energy transition or for cleaner energy solutions. It seems as though those funds are in jeopardy. It seems as though the government is looking to keep 3 coal-fired stations online. We know the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Jose Ramokgopa, has mentioned that he is still happy with having coal-fired power stations running because it is meeting the demand and helping them service this. So we're going to look at that, see what that all means. Interestingly enough, we're looking at it on the eve of 100 days of no load shedding. So I hope that this conversation isn't the end of that 100 days of no load shedding, but we'll dig into this with independent analyst Tshepo Kadima around these developments and try and make sense of that. And then we've got our SME feature on a Thursday, and this week I'm joined by the founder of Legends Barbershop. Sheldon Tatchell finally sits down to speak to me about how he built the business, where the business is now, what they're doing now. They've just launched a new product, and the business is doing exceptionally well, so I'm looking forward to that conversation as well. But as I said, markets have been moving, and Henko Creer has been keeping an eye on those movements throughout the day. He joins us now to give us a quick summary of those movements. Good evening, Henko. Lovely to speak to you again. Second straight day, the stock market finishing in positive territory and the rand gaining ground.
Yes, Jimmy, good evening to you and to Ashraf and to me. Good evening to all of our listeners. Yes, similar to yesterday, another great green day, and it was almost the case for markets overseas and also then our local markets. Another green day in the US at the moment. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, both of those are trading about 0.7% stronger, and then European stocks, they finished in the green a short while ago. The FTSE 100 as well as the CAC 40 both gained 0.9% today, and then the DAX finished the day 0.5% stronger. And then a similar picture here by us on local markets, where the JSE finished also 0.5% stronger and at a lovely, high, wonderful level of 81,155 points. You don't see that every day. The industrial index gained 0.2%, the financial index 0.3%, and the resources index finished today 0.9%, almost 1% up. Vodacom had a terrific day, gave a stellar performance today, finishing 4% stronger. Pick n Pay, for the first time in a really long time, looking up and lifting its head and also gaining 4% today. Then there was Mass and Karoo, both of those 3.5% stronger. Montauk and Equities, they finished today 3.2% stronger, and Anglo Gold and Platts and DRD Gold each finished today 3% up. On the negative side, Mr. Price lost 2.5% today. Truworths and We Buy Cars, they finished the day 2% weaker, and the MultiChoice Group, Telkom, and the Life Healthcare Group, they finished the day 1% weaker. Among the 10 largest companies and stocks on the JSE, we see British American Tobacco, Naspers, Standard Bank, and First Rand. They each finished the day 0.5% stronger, but Prosus, Anglo, and Richmond finished the day 0.8% weaker. Then if we have a look at what the rand is doing at the moment, 18 Rand 25 to the US dollar, 19 Rand 73 to the euro, 12 Rand 28 to the Australian dollar, and 23 Rand and 30 cents to the British pound. On the commodities market, the price of gold is $2,360 an ounce. Silver is sitting at $30.30. Platinum is trading at $1,000, and palladium at $1,020 an ounce. The oil price is $87.40 a barrel. Then if I finish off with the price of Bitcoin, which is slipping, by the way, now sitting at $57,000, but that's still 1,050,000 rand. And Jimmy, that's how the markets performed.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. There's lots for us to dig into and unpack. The resource counters seemingly looking very attractive at the moment. We're going to dig into these and other stories just after 6. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
BMX, which stands for Bicycle Motocross. She's a BMX rider. Mianda Masetti, was there something that hooked you to the sport initially in terms of getting you on a bike and then knowing that this is what you were destined to do?
When I was younger, before I knew what BMX was, like my brother and his friends would always build like a ramp to just ride. His friend invited him to a birthday party and then he started riding and then I went to go watch it and I was like, this just looks amazing and I had to try it.
Good evening, Mr. Michael Abramson. Your explanation there of BMX, bicycle motocross, that's strange to me because a bicycle doesn't have a motor. Shouldn't it rather be called bicycle cross? But anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't name the sport. It's called Bicycle Motocross, BMX. That's what it stands for. You're absolutely right. Some things are a little bit inexplicable in the real world.
Top Sport on SAFM.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, we should have been talking about innovation around 5:20, but we made some changes because of speaking to the Minister of Basic Education. So here it goes anyway. Amongst the innovative issues of the last few days is what I'd call the new, improved relaunch of the SABC Plus app, right? So Abongile Koke is with me, SABC's over-the-top services manager. Fancy title. I suppose the new app is also over-the-top too.
Hi, Ashraf. I'll let the South Africans tell us their true views about it, if it's really over the top or not.
We'll certainly find out. Well, what is this app about, firstly? Because I'm assuming some people know about it, the original version. For others, they're listening to us talking about it for the very first time.
Yes, thanks. So basically, SABC Plus is a SABC product that gives listeners and viewers the best of what SABC has to offer. From retro content, video content, to the latest news, to the 19 radio stations, 4 digital-only available radio stations. So it's got a lot of diverse and lots of content that the consumer or the public can just go into it and choose whatever they want to consume.
Now, for a long time, the SABC did not have its own app, right? How important is that you've got these massive titles, and you've mentioned all of them, right, under one roof, so to speak?
Look, what people don't know is that SABC has spent a lot of time in the background doing a lot of investigations, trying to understand the different markets, trying to understand where the future of digital is heading. Usually people, and this is mostly in social media, where they say SABC is less to enter the digital age. But I usually say that we are on time. There's never the right time, but we believe with what we have, what we also released yesterday with the revamped SABC Plus, it speaks to the now. It speaks to some of the items that the public has been requesting that we make available, the different features, the different compatibility in different devices. So it's something that SABC has put in a lot of effort, a lot of different-minded brains, a lot of people that understand the digital landscape to put products that is called SABC Plus today.
So what then can the audience do? It could be a listener, it could be a viewer, right? Historically it was like you listen on the radio, you watch on television, right? How has this changed for them if they download the SABC Plus app?
Okay, so here's the beauty of SABC Plus. Let's pause on SABC Plus and let's look at SABC in its entirety. You've got a news division, right? The way they just specialize with news. You've got video entertainment, where they bring you the visual aspects of the entertainment in content. And then you've got the radio side of it. Radio side can be podcasts, can be live linear broadcast. So with SABC Plus, you get everything in one. You don't have to leave the app to consume whether Uzalo or Skim Sam, or you want to watch Lehigh or the news channel, or you want to listen to SAFM, to what Ashraf has got to say.
I was so hoping you say that. I was like watching to say if you're going to say anything like that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's everything under one app. And as a public broadcaster, it is very rare and globally where you find all the different aspects of entertainment in one app. So we believe that we have jumped a huge milestone and we've achieved a lot. And we are just hoping that the citizens out there and the listeners can appreciate the efforts that we had to put together and then produce.
I do take it's a free download. I mean, I certainly want them to listen to the National Pulse, and the only way they can do that if it's a free download, right? Yeah.
So basically, you download. Obviously, you have to use your internet connectivity that you have. But when you stream, there are no subscriptions. It's a free streaming platform. The way SABC has been providing content to the public. So there are no subscriptions involved.
Let's talk about the bigger picture. I mean, in a competing world where, I know there's issues around newspapers being shut down in a few months' time. I think some leading titles, right? So are you telling the audience that, in fact, watch us less on television, you can watch us on TV via the app? That means that audience has shifted, and the same would be via radio. You don't need a radio to listen, let's say, to this show.
So what we are saying now is that the audience have got a bigger pot to choose how they want to consume SABC content. And you're not only limited to you being home in front of the TV or listening in your car radio or even in your household with the radio. You can consume SABC content on the go. And even if you are in your household, just to share a bit, if you allow me. So SABC has provided SABC Plus in different platforms. So if you're at work, for instance, or in front of the laptop, you can go to www.sabc-plus.com, and then you can be able to stream it from a laptop or desktop. If you're on your mobile, depending whether you're on Huawei, Android, or iOS, you can download it from the associated or relevant store marketplace that your phone uses. Or if you're home and you've got, for instance, a non-compatible TV, you can and you've got an Apple box, or coming soon is a Google TV box, set-top box. You can plug it in and then you can consume SABC Plus. So there are various mediums of consumption that are available for the audience.
Okay. How then do you deal with the challenge of audiences? Because, I mean, historically, people listening to us, listening to me now, there's an advert we play. And I mean, if there's an advert and somebody pays for the advert, the same would apply to a television show, right? So if they're watching or listening on the apps, right, certainly from an SABC point of view, where do you get the revenue that you lose out from if the audience is not watching on, TV or radio?
So that's a very tricky one, because it's similar to saying without the digital landscape and someone is not viewing, what happens to the revenue? So it's a matter of our sales department being able to push as much as they can to avail the right clients that are willing to invest in the product SABC Plus through the adverts. But at the same time, we need to try as much as we can to get the audience glued with different content offerings on SABC Plus. For instance, 30 seconds or 15 seconds worth of adverts whilst you are streaming versus a 1 minute. Those are two different landscape. So our adverts that are available there, because we have to try and generate, they don't exceed for now more than 30 seconds. So we would request our audience just to also consume those adverts, because who knows, there might be something interesting through those adverts that they will be interested in.
Okay, that's quite fascinating. So, okay, bottom line to this, they can download and they can do that like right away, right?
Yes.
Listening to us and downloading at the same time. And is that a plus with the plus is in PLUS, or the plus as we would know it in mathematics?
It's PLUS. So okay. It's SABC and then plus.plus.com.
I can tell you I've downloaded it before and I've used it, and just anecdotally over the last few days, people have downloaded it since I think yesterday. They're like, wow, we just love just how good this app is, and I'm simply relating what I've heard from others. So now you know. Abongile, thanks for your time. Much appreciated.
Thanks a lot, Ashraf.
Right, there we are. Abongile Koke, who's the SABC over-the-top services manager for the launch of the new improved SABC Plus app. Download it now. I'm going to repeat that often, that you need to listen. You can listen on radio. You can listen on the app, which I think is just absolutely great.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, let's wrap up with a story that should, I think it should please you. In fact, an injection containing the antiretroviral drug lenacapavir, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on that pronunciation, is highly effective at preventing HIV infection for 6 months per shot. Now, this, I understand, is according to a top-line study around it. Let's find out more about it with Professor Linda Gale Becker, the Chief Executive Officer at the Desmond Tutu Health Foundation. Prof. Becker, thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Always a pleasure, Ashraf. Hi.
Hi, indeed. How significant is what we're just talking about now?
Well, very significant. You know, we've been struggling to really bring down the infection rate, particularly amongst young people living in Eastern and Southern Africa. And this study, called Purpose 1, was conducted amongst women who have sex with men, 5,000 of them, in fact. And we showed in the people who received the lenacapavir 6-monthly subcutaneous injection, we did not see a single HIV infection. That was compared with the arm in which people were taking the oral PrEP pill. So although we did see some benefit in that arm, we did not see the 0 infections that occurred in the active lenacapavir injection arm. So, I think it is pretty amazing and the best results we've ever seen in a prevention trial for HIV in this region.
Okay, and who's developing it?
It is being developed by a pharmaceutical company called Gilead Sciences. Now, they also make the oral PrEP pill, but they've come out with this long-acting injectable agent for people who struggle to take a pill daily. And there are many of us, right, who really, find it hard to do something daily. And this takes that stress away. You get the injection, you come back in 6 months, you get another injection, and you get protection, because the antiretroviral dissolves slowly over a 6-month period.
I see. Fascinating. I think the key part of all this is the word preventing. So this is a proactive position to take, as opposed to reactive.
Correct. You've got to, recognize that I am sexually active. I'm at risk for HIV exposure. Maybe I have a partner. I'm not entirely sure what his status is. Or I've gone into a new relationship, or my partner is, maybe having other partners, etc., then I might think about taking this injection prophylactically. So prophylactic means I'm taking it ahead of the exposure in preparation for the potential that I might be exposed to HIV. So it is indeed a pre-exposure prophylaxis preventive strategy.
Okay, I mean, this could well be an absolute game changer if that were the case. So how far down the line are we in terms of being an accepted practice here?
Well, so this is where the rubber hits the road, right? We've got to see the pharmaceutical company has just come out with a recommendation that the clinical trial should be stopped in its randomized phase. So we're going to move into an open label phase now where everybody gets access to the injection if they wish. We now need to see how they're going to commercialize the injection. So they have said they're going to come in with tiered pricing for low resource countries like ours. And they are going to give the ingredients, if you like, as a license to generic companies. And that's the brilliant way to bring the price down, because at the end of the day, it's going to matter how much it costs as to whether we can get it out in the public sector to everyone who needs it.
Absolutely.
And that's what we have to do.
And just lastly, do I understand that the trial that you had with I think you mentioned 5,000 people, that was done in South Africa. Why South Africa? Why not elsewhere?
South Africa and Uganda, we unfortunately have, the biggest number of HIV people living with HIV in any country in the world. And we also have a very high transmission rate. We're still seeing a huge number of infections. And we really do need effective prevention, as I say, especially amongst young people, young women, young men who have sex with men. Other young people really need good prevention options. So here is a new one.
Well, let's leave it at that. So Professor Linda Gale Becker, Chief Executive Officer at the Desmond Tutu Health Foundation, thank you for your time. Maybe that's ending on a very light note, light as in positivity and positive in the real positive sense of the word, if you get my point. Right, that's the show. So love the fact that you've been engaged with us on the show all throughout the last 3 hours. And as always, we do it tomorrow once again. It is the National Pulse, and we reflect the mood of the nation, the feel of the nation, and what is it that moves the National Pulse. And besides calling on air and WhatsApping, you can also engage us on social media platforms before the show, during the show, and even after the show, like now. Just follow SFM Radio, follow me as well, Ashraf Garda, on all the different platforms. We'll certainly say hi back to you if you give us a shout out. That's the show. More to come with a whole lot of issues around business and sport, and then current affairs issues after 8 o'clock. So listen out for all of that coming up. But right now, first things first, it's the news at 6 with Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda. Safe travels. The top stories at 6, no lavish lifestyles for new cabinet members, and missing child's body exhumed in